Hey guy, tonight we're not standing tall with a sword raised high in some slow-motion cinematic glory. We're not in Gladiator. There's no triumphant music swelling behind you. No audience chanting your name like you're a hero. We're stepping into the dirt of the Colosseum, the real kind. The kind soaked in old sweat, coppery blood, and a fear so thick you can taste it before the first strike lands. You're not Russell Crowe. You're a slave, a tool. A body trained to die well and die fast. Not the noble duels choreographed for a cheering crowd, but the kind with broken weapons, infected wounds, and the smell of someone else's panic just inches from your face. You might think being a Roman gladiator was all strength, courage, and glory, but tonight you'll feel the calluses on your feet. You'll hear the crack of bone before the crowd cheers, and you'll learn how quickly bravery turns to begging when the sand turns red. And trust me, Guy, by the end of this journey, you'll never look at a sword the same way again. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. Leave a comment. It's strangely comforting knowing that somewhere across the world, another sleepy mind is drifting through the same forgotten corridors of history. And if you enjoy these late-night walks through dusty, uncomfortable pasts, quiet and slow, and just boring enough to put you to sleep, consider liking or subscribing. It means more than you know. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft, steady hum. Let your body sink a little deeper into the mattress. Forget the crowd, forget the blood, forget the whip at your back. You're not brave, you're tired. And that's more dangerous in ancient Rome than you think. Let's begin. You thought you were a warrior. No. You were an investment with legs. You weren't recruited, you were purchased. Maybe you were dragged in chains after a battle, another nameless captive in a Roman victory parade. Maybe you were condemned by a judge for stealing bread or murdering a man. Or maybe, and this is the cruelest twist, maybe you walked in on your own, voluntarily. Because your stomach was empty, your debts were piling up, and you heard there was bread and shelter behind these walls, and a chance, however small, at glory. But that word, voluntary, it doesn't mean what you think. In the Roman world, it meant desperation. The men who signed up the Octorati were often in debt so deep they'd sell their bodies for a roof and a meal. Once inside, your name was stripped. Your past, your trade, your family gone. You weren't a man. You were a property, owned by a lanista, the master of the gladiator school. And the lanista didn't see you as human. He saw you as a bet, a beast, a costly one to be sure, trained, fed, and fitted with gear, but still just a beast. Your value wasn't measured in wisdom, kindness, or skill. It was measured in scars, in reach, in how well your death might sell tickets. You lived in a barracks with dozens of others. You ate barley beans and water, the fuel of livestock. And when you slept, it wasn't in peace. It was under watch, in silence, like a sword hung on a wall. Ready, sharpened. Not yours. They trained you to kill. But more than that, they trained you to die well. With posture, with flair, because a sloppy death was a waste of investment. You weren't preparing for a career. You were being groomed for sacrifice, and everyone knew it, except, perhaps, the boy you used to be. Sometimes when the yard was quiet and the blood had dried, you'd remember what your hands were, once for mending nets, guiding plows, holding a daughter. Now, those same hands were for swinging steel. Until they too were broken and replaced. And after being chosen, you were thrown into a place with no exits. It's called the ludus. But don't let the name fool you. It doesn't sound like screaming when you say it. High walls, no windows, one entrance locked. You're not allowed out, not even to see the sky unless it's through bars. They say it's to protect you, but it feels more like protecting the investment. A broken gladiator isn't just useless. He's expensive. The air inside is thick with dust and sweat. And the sounds, the whip, the groan of wooden dummies being struck, and the quiet sobs someone tries to hide in the corner at night. Your body is no longer your own. You're given food, barley beans, and a thick porridge locals call gladiator gruel. It's heavy. It bloats you, not for health, but for padding. Fat helps slow blades. A dead man with muscle is still dead, but a plump one, he might take a few more cuts before falling. That's worth something. Training isn't once a day. It's all day. You rise with the sun and sleep only when your legs won't move. You wield wooden swords, twice the weight of real ones. You swing them until your arms burn. You jab against straw men packed like stone, even if you're limping, even if your ribs still cracked from last week. Because if you stop, you don't just rest, you get punished. The lanista doesn't yell. He doesn't have to. The lash does the talking. 10 strokes for hesitating, 20 for backtalk, chains for defiance. No food for 3 days if you don't bow low enough. Some try to escape. They don't get far. You hear about it over dinner, which is fitting, because that's how you're seen here meet. Not a fighter yet, not even a slave with a trade. You are a creature being fattened, hardened, and trained to bleed well. But not too soon. You're not a soldier. You're not an artist. You're something in between, and hated by both. They don't train you to be a man. They train you to be something. A murmillo, a secutor, a retiarius, each has its own costume, its own rhythm, its own fatal flaw. They look at your body and choose your fate. Big and strong, you get the heavy shield and fish-like helmet of a murmillo. Fast and wiry, you're cast as a retiarius, with net and trident agile, but naked from the chest up. There's no choice, no appeal. You don't ask for a role. You are assigned one, like a dog trained for a specific show trick. And once chosen, you must become it completely. You learn how to move like it, fight like it, fall like it. Because this isn't war. This is theater, a brutal ballet where the audience wants blood and beauty. Every fight is choreographed not in moves, but in expectations. You're not told the outcome, but you are expected to give a performance. Your shield must shine. Your steps must echo. Your death, if it comes, must be watchable. They teach you to fall in 3 styles. One forward, one sideways, and one slowly with your arms flung wide so the crowd sees the moment you break. The mask they put on your face weighs 12 pounds. You see through tiny slits. It fogs with every breath. Your sweat pools inside. You learn to ignore the sting in your eyes. Because the audience doesn't care if you can't see. They came to watch, not to understand. You are not a man anymore. You are a type, a role, an object wrapped in iron and muscle that dances and dies on cue. And when you finally step into the arena and the sun hits your helmet, you realize something. Even your death won't really be yours. And then you're led out onto the stage, not to shine, but to fall. The Colosseum rises around you like the open mouth of a god. 50,000 seats, marble tiers stacked like the heavens. The sun pours down hot and sharp onto the sand. And the sand, it's not golden, it's brown, darkened by days and days of dried blood. People came early. They brought bread, wine, dates wrapped in cloth. They laugh, they gossip, they lean into one another like they were at the theater. Because they are. You are the show. Some stare in silence. Some yell before anything even begins. Children giggle. Old men make bets. And women, well, some cheer, others cry. But none of them leave. A trumpet sounds. The gate opens. And out steps your opponent. Maybe you recognize him. Maybe you train together. Maybe you hate him. Maybe you don't. It doesn't matter. Today the crowd will pick favorites. They'll want a story. A twist. A slow, aching fall. Not too fast, not too slow. Because this isn't war. This is art. Ugly, bloody art. And like all good art, it has rules. Don't make it boring. Don't die too fast. Don't let the blood clot too soon. And above all, make it look good. They don't want to see you trip and get stabbed in the gut within 10 seconds. They want parries. They want desperate turns. They want sweat on your brow and terror in your eyes. Then a beautiful finish. So you dance, you swing, you block. You breathe in the dust and out the fear. And when steel finally finds flesh, when someone goes down, it gets quiet. For just a second. Then the noise returns. Louder, heavier. Like thunder rolling over the hills of some faraway place you'll never see again. You're not dead yet, but you're not in control either. You glance up, toward the stands, toward the emperor's seat, toward the thumbs. Not all gladiators die in the arena, but all of them leave something behind in it. When you no longer control whether you live or die, you start believing in something. Sometimes it begins with a whisper, a breathless mutter in the dark. A name offered to the ceiling, Hercules, Mars, Nemesis. Other times, it's a drawing, a crude etching of a lion or a god carved with a nail into the edge of your bunk. Or a string tied 3 times around your wrist, soaked in wine left to dry. A talisman maybe, maybe not. Does it matter? Because here, nothing makes sense. The matches are drawn by lot, random, or so they say. Sometimes you fight a friend. Sometimes you face someone who shouldn't even be alive. No one explains why. They just hand you the weapons and open the gate. And so you turn to the gods, to symbols, to numbers scratched on walls, to the rhythm of your breath, and the way the birds flew past the window this morning. Superstition becomes routine. You touch the left side of your chest before each fight. You sleep facing west. You never eat figs on fight day. Some tattoo the names of their chosen protectors on their arms. Mars for strength, Hercules for endurance, Nemesis for revenge. Some even believe that death in the arena brings freedom. That if you fall with honor, your soul escapes the chains of slavery. That your name forgotten in life might be whispered after death. That the roar of the crowd could carry you up, if only for a second, into something like peace. Hope is dangerous, but here it's the only thing they can't beat out of you. You hear men cry at night. Not loud, not childlike, just low, like animals that know they're already bleeding. And you hear prayers, so many prayers, not just for survival, but for meaning. That this is not just pain, that it's destiny, but destiny doesn't answer back. And the gods, they never seem to bleed. And then it's your turn, whether you're ready or not. There is no calendar, no printed schedule, no ceremony where they gently tell you, hey, you fight next Thursday. No. One day someone shouts your name during roll call, and your stomach drops. Or you're woken in the middle of the night, a hand on your shoulder, a torchlight in your face, a whisper, prepare? Sometimes you train for months before your first match. Other times, just weeks. It depends on the crowd, on the sponsor, on how many bodies they need that day. You line up in the courtyard before dawn. A procession begins, a ritual. Not for the gods, but for the audience. You're paraded through the streets, oiled and armed. Your name read out like a prize on a list no one wants to win. People cheer. They point. They throw bread. They shout odds. It feels like a celebration until you realize you're the reason for it. The games begin with music. Trumpets, drums, a priest blesses the sand, a senator makes a speech, and then one by one, the gates open. Some fights are to the death. That's what the crowd wants, a finish, a climax, a silence that only a body can create. Other bouts are to first blood, or until surrender, meant to please the eye, not drench the arena. But the line is thin, and sometimes it blurs. A misplaced swing, a slip. And suddenly, what was for show becomes fatal. Waiting is worse than fighting. The dread builds. You try not to think about it, but the hours stretch like a neck on the block. Some men break. They refuse to eat. They smash their heads against walls. They hide blades in straw and turn them on themselves. Because waiting to die can feel worse than dying. And then, when it finally happens, you hear it. The clank of armor, the scuff of metal soles on stone, the creak of the gate. You smell oil, blood, fear. You step forward and wonder, not if you'll die, but how long you can delay it. Nothing feels quite like waiting to die. Unless, of course, you've lived through it. The night before your first fight is different. The barracks are quieter than usual. No training, no shouting, just the steady creak of men trying not to breathe too loud. Some whisper prayers, others just stare at the ceiling, at the wall, at their hands. As if the lines in their palms might hold a clue, a reason, a way out. You lie on a straw mattress that smells of mold and old blood, next to a man whose breath stinks of barley and fear. You can hear his heart, you can hear yours, and for a moment they almost sink, as if your bodies know something your mind refuses to accept. You don't sleep. Not really. You drift in and out of a place that isn't rest, just silence. Broken, now and then, by sobs or whispers, or the sound of someone sharpening a blade, not for battle, but for escape. If you're literate, you might scratch out a will. One line, maybe two. Not much to leave behind when everything you own has someone else's name on it. But still a gesture. Something. Others do different things. Some write on the walls, some sing. One man once painted his eyelids with ashes, saying he wanted to look fierce when death came. Some run. They slip into shadows, climb the wall, vanish into alleys. Most don't get far, and when they're caught, they don't go quietly. The punishment is public, so others remember. Because gladiators don't die in secret. They die well, or they don't die at all. And so you stay. You count the beams above you, the breaths in your chest, the scars on your wrist. You feel the moonlight on your face cold and pale, and you wonder if your name will be shouted tomorrow, if the sand will be warm, if the crowd will cheer, if it will hurt. And then just before dawn, you close your eyes, not in peace, but because you've run out of ways to stay awake. The first morning doesn't feel like morning. There's no rooster, no mother stirring a pot, no dog barking down the road, just the creak of wood, the clink of iron, and the sour, stale smell of 50 men who haven't washed in days. You blink awake on a plank bed, flat, narrow, splintered. The thin blanket barely covers your legs. It smells of mold and maybe someone else's fear. Someone walks past, bare feet on stone. You don't see their face, just the blur of a scarred calf and a metal ankle cuff. No one speaks. A few men shift on their beds. Others already sit up, silent elbows, on knees, heads down. The room is filled with breathing, heavy, steady, waiting. You sit up slowly. Everything aches, your neck, your back, the hollow behind your eyes. And then the smell hits you. Not sweat that came first. No, this is food, sort of. A bucket is passed. Ladle into a bowl barley mash, warm and bland. You chew because it's there. It doesn't taste like anything. Not home, not safety, just calories. Someone hands you a piece of coarse bread. It's stale at the edges, but your hands shake as you take it anyway. Still no one talks. You think you hear a whisper in the far corner, but it's quickly swallowed by silence. There's no privacy here, not even in thought. Your mind starts to reach for familiar places, a face, a name, a room, with a door that shuts. Family. Do you even remember their voices? The memory comes sharp and fast. A sibling's laugh, a bowl set on a wooden table, a lullaby off-key but loving. You swallow hard, not because of the food, but because remembering hurts more than forgetting. Your training hasn't started yet, but already your body is preparing, tensing, locking away softness. You look down at your hands. They're still yours, for now. And then the horn sounds, sharp, brief, final. It's time. Before you train, you're inspected. Not spoken to, not greeted. Inspected like livestock. A man walks down the line, not in armor, not with kindness, but with a wax tablet and a stick. He pokes, prods, lifts your arm, pushes your shoulder. He doesn't ask how you feel. He doesn't care. A bruise on your rib. He presses it harder, to check if it's still tender. It is. But pain doesn't change anything. You're still training today. A gash on your leg, they dab it with vinegar and send you on your way. Not to heal, but to move. Because the lanista paid for a body, and bodies don't rest unless he says so. Even when you're feverish, you show up. You lift the sword. You run the drills. And if you faint, you're punished for wasting time. You start to learn something. Not about technique, but about ownership. Your body isn't yours anymore. It belongs to them, to the school, to the arena, to the promise of spectacle. You no longer flinch when they touch you. You expect it. You brace. You become still like an object that's been handled too often and no longer bothers to protest. At night, you press on the bruises not to soothe, but to memorize. Where you hurt, how deep, which part still answers to you. You scratch a tally into the wall with a bone chip. Not for days survived, but for the number of times you trained while bleeding. You tell yourself that this is normal, that this is strength, that maybe if you endure enough, they'll stop noticing you. But they don't, because here flesh is currency, and your pain, that's just part of the investment. You think they care about you, because they feed you, because they bandage your wounds, because they bring in a physician when your shoulder dislocates for the third time, but they don't care about you. They care about the value of you. You're an investment, a walking price tag in sandals. And like any smart businessman, the lanista protects his assets. You're insured. Yes, insured. Documents are drawn up. Names recorded. If you die too early, he gets compensation. But not always full price. Especially if the death wasn't dramatic enough to count as honorable. You are not a person. You're a line item. With maintenance costs and replacement value. When you're injured, he calculates. How deep is the cut? How long will you limp? Will the scar ruin your stage presence? If it's minor, you get patched up. Ointments, poultices, maybe even rest if it improves your resale value. But if it's bad, if you're too damaged to draw a crowd, you may be retired, which is a polite word for discarded. Some are sent to sweep the arena. Some are sold for manual labor. Some simply vanish. And when they vanish, no one asks why. Because when a tool breaks, you don't hold a funeral. You just buy a new one. The doctors who treat you, they're not healers. They're mechanics, trained to get you back in the arena, not back to life. They wrap your ribs, not so you can breathe easier, but so you can swing your sword without falling over. They reset your fingers in cold water, not to save pain, but to save time. You start to notice things. The way your food changes if you win. The way your name is spoken when you draw crowds. The way no one makes eye contact if you lose 2 in a row. You start to think like them. You calculate yourself. And somewhere along the way, you stop asking how you feel. You ask, am I still worth something? You eat every day. More than some. More than most, really. But you're not being nourished. You're being prepared. The food isn't bad. It's not rotten. Just relentless. Barley porridge again. Thick, bland, sticky at the roof of your mouth. You chew, you swallow, you endure. Then beans, boiled into mush. Sometimes with a bit of honey stirred in. Not for taste, for weight. Because the goal isn't strength, it's mass. Bulk. Soft tissue between your skin and your bones, so the blade doesn't go too deep too fast. Getting fat, they joke, means you're getting ready. It's not an insult here. It's a compliment, a strategy. You're not being fed to thrive. You're being stuffed to survive just long enough to bleed well in the arena. No meat. Too expensive, too noble. You are not a senator. You are not a citizen. You are fuel. You eat quickly. No ceremony, no table. Just hunched back, slurping, swallowing, scraping bowls clean. Not because the food is good, but because it's the only thing that doesn't hurt. And still, despite the full belly, you're exhausted. Training drains you. Sweat pours from your back before the second drill. Your knees shake. Your jaw clenches from the same repetitive chew. You feel heavy, but hollow. Sometimes when no one is looking, you press your fingers into your side just to feel how soft you become. You wonder what it's for. You wonder if this is what a pig feels the week before the festival. But then the bell rings. Time for more sparring. Time for more bruises. And the food inside you lurches like a weight you didn't ask for. You don't feel strong. You don't feel ready. You just feel full and tired and slightly more edible. They don't raise their voices. They don't argue. They punish. In the ludus, the rules aren't written. They're bruised into your skin, burned into your spine, etched into the silence after someone screams. Miss a drill, you get the whip. Fall out of formation, you do it again and again, until your legs shake so hard they forget how to stand still. Refuse an order. They don't scold you, they shackle you, in the courtyard, where everyone can see. And the worst part, you're not the only one punished. If one man slacks, the whole group pays. 10 lashes for you, 10 more for them, even if they did nothing wrong, especially if they did nothing wrong. It teaches you something faster than fear ever could. Don't be the weak link, because your brothers will remind you. Not kindly, not quietly. One look from them after they've been beaten, because of you, cuts deeper than any whip. You start to count your steps. You breathe in rhythm. You check your stance 10 times before the instructor can. Not because you fear him, but because you fear the others, the men who sleep beside you, eat beside you, train beside you, bleed beside you. Discipline becomes survival. Not just physical, social, psychological. There's no place here for almost. No space for not feeling well. No patience for sorry. Mistakes don't mean you learn. They mean someone suffers. You can hear it in the courtyard, the crack of leather, the short, sharp gasp, the breathless pause, right before the second strike. You never look away. That's another rule. Looking away means weakness, and weakness gets punished. Over time, the pain blends into routine. You stop asking why. You stop expecting mercy. And slowly, very slowly, you stop fearing the whip. Because what you really fear is being the reason someone else gets it. The smell comes first. Not sweat. That's always there. But something sharper, familiar in a way that makes your stomach twist. It's iron. Old iron, soaked into sand, baked by sun, never quite gone. You look down at the training yard. It's dry today, dusty, but the stains remain. Dark patches, irregular shapes, not fresh, but not forgotten. No one talks about them. No one points, because what's the point tomorrow? There'll be more. You smell it when you kneel, when you fall, when your hand presses into the dirt to push yourself back up. The scent clings to your skin, slips into your nostrils, sits in the back of your throat. You can taste it, metallic, like biting your tongue, like licking the edge of a dull blade. Some try to ignore it. They breathe through their mouths, chew leaves, smear ointments under their nose. But the body remembers, even when the mind tries to forget. And the yard. It's not merciful. If you fall, you rise. There is no helping hand, only the expectation that you will get up. Bleeding, wipe it off, swollen ankle, keep moving. Dizzy, then die standing. That's the rule here. The trainers watch. They don't call out encouragement. They don't correct your form. They just note who gets up fastest, who hides pain best, who bleeds less. You begin to understand this place isn't for building warriors, it's for sorting meat. Some are lean and fast, some are strong and slow, but all are meant to be consumed. And this yard? It's the butcher's pen, the final weigh-in before the show. You start to see it differently, not as a place of learning, but of preparation, like animals herded through narrow gates one by one to sharpen their final trick. And the smell, the blood that lingers in every corner, is not a warning. It's a promise. You share a room, a bed sometimes, a bowl, a shift in training. You share sweat bruises, even scraps of bread. But never trust. Not here. Friendship isn't forbidden. It's just not useful. Not when the man beside you might be ordered to kill you by next week. You watch how they move, how they tie their sandals, how they clean their blades. Not because you admire them, but because one day you might need to find their weakness. He sleeps across from you, snores lightly, breathes slow, and still you don't close both eyes. Because last month, 2 men in your cell were chosen for a demonstration match. One walked back with a broken wrist. The other didn't walk back at all. The instructors don't say who you'll fight. Sometimes you find out an hour before, sometimes 10 seconds. So you learn to prepare for everyone, including the man who helped bandage your shoulder yesterday. He sharpens his blade too long, even when it doesn't need it, just to hear the sound. It's not a warning. It's a reminder I'm still here. And I want to live more than you do. The air in the room is thick, not with smoke, but with calculation. Every silence has weight. Every glance has a question. Will it be you or me? You try not to speak too much. Words create softness. Softness is dangerous. So you nod, you grunt, you avoid names, because names make people real. And real people are harder to kill. There are no alliances here, only moments of mutual use. He lifts your arm today, you trip him tomorrow. Balance, that's the rule. You lie down at night with your back to the wall. Always. You keep your hand near the edge of your cot, where the knife is, just in case. You've forgotten what it's like to sleep without thinking, what it's like to dream of anything but sand and steel. Because in here you don't lose to an enemy. You lose to a roommate. They say it's just practice. But nothing about it feels safe. The sword's real. The shield's heavy. The pain immediate. They blunt the blades, sure. File down the edges, wrap a strip of cloth near the tip. But steel is still steel. And when a man swings full force, no dullness can protect you from the weight. You learn to dodge fast, block low, roll with the hit. Because if you don't, you bleed. Not symbolically, not metaphorically, literally. Your knuckles split, your ribs bruise, your shins crack. Some days someone screams, the wrong parry, the wrong angle, a blade slips through, it's a joint, and just like that, training becomes injury. Injury becomes career-ending, if you're lucky. One man lost 3 fingers last week. He still trains. He has no choice. Another limps now. The knee won't bend right. His opponent didn't stop when he fell. No one does, because the drill doesn't pause for pain. Pain is part of it. A test. A filter. You cry out, you fall behind. You fall behind. You don't make it to the arena. And if you don't make it there, what are you worth? You try to stay sharp. Not just your reflexes, your awareness. Where the others are. How hard they swing. What they're hiding in their eyes. Because even during friendly sparring, accidents happen. Some accidents feel like choices. You don't accuse. You just take note. Who to trust less? Who to watch closer? At night, you rub salves on your forearms. You trace the new bruises like old maps. You wonder which part will give out, first your shoulder, your ankle, your will. And when you close your eyes, you see it again. The slow arc of a sword, the blur of motion, the moment you flinched half a second late. It was just a drill, but it could have been your last. It happened during the last round, late. The air thick with heat and dust. 2 rookies, both tired. One, just a bit slower. He tried to dodge, too wide, too high. The blade caught him just under the ribs. There was a sound, not a scream. More like breath snapping in half. He dropped, hard, didn't move again. The trainers didn't rush over. No one yelled stop. The others just stood there, weapons still in hand, dust still rising from their feet. And then it was done. He didn't die like a warrior. He died like an error. No ceremony, no mourning. That night, no one talked. The room was quieter than usual, not from sadness, but from calculation. You could feel it. Not grief, not guilt. Just the quiet collective understanding that this wasn't unusual. Just early. You lay on your cot staring at the ceiling, trying not to hear the faint scrape of something heavy being dragged down the hallway. Before dawn, they washed the yard. No blood, no sign. Just a slightly darker patch in the sand that didn't quite match the rest. By breakfast, his bed was gone. By warm-up, someone new stood in his place. No one asked the new recruit where he came from. No one told him what happened. He didn't need to know. He would feel it, in the air, in the way everyone looked past him, in the way no one asked his name. Because in this place, you don't get remembered for dying. You get remembered for surviving. And even then, only until someone else replaces you. You try not to think about it too hard. You pretend your hands aren't trembling. You chew your barley, slowly ignore the knot in your stomach, and whisper to yourself that it wasn't you. Not this time, but you also don't ask when your time will come. Because the yard never answers questions. It only replaces bodies. You thought dying would be the end. It isn't. Not here. Here even your death has expectations. They teach you how to fall. Not just to land safely, but to look good doing it. There's a way to drop the shield. A way to crumple. A way to collapse that says, I accept this. I am noble. I am worth watching. No flailing, no shrieking. No clutching your wound and crawling toward the edge of the arena. That's bad form. Ugly, undignified. You're not supposed to die like an animal. You're supposed to die like a hero, even if you were never meant to be one. The crowd wants a show, and nothing ruins a good performance like a death that looks awkward. Some men practice it. In the dorms, on straw mats. How to drop to one knee, how to arch their back, how to let their head fall back with just the right slowness. They don't say it out loud, but they all know a bad death follows you further than a coward's life. And if you mess it up, if your limbs twitch, if you cry out, if you soil yourself, or beg, you'll be remembered not as a warrior, but as a joke. There's a word they use. Ugula, finish him. If the crowd yells it, you're done. If they raise their thumbs down, you kneel. You wait. And you do not flinch. Because flinching ruins the moment. Some say the best deaths are silent. A gasp, a single spasm, then stillness, like a curtain falling, clean, respectful, entertaining. That's the word that burns worst of all. You're not aiming for peace, or for dignity, or even for mercy. You're aiming to die, well, to give the audience one final shape to remember you by. A pose, a frame, a dying breath held just long enough to be applauded. And maybe, just maybe in that perfect death, they'll forget you were ever a slave. You used to have a name, given to you at birth, whispered by your mother, carved into childhood songs, written maybe in a family record back home. Now you're 47, or maybe big back, or one eye, or worse, just that one. The Lanista doesn't bother with real names. They're long, hard to remember, unnecessary. Instead, he scratches a number into a wax tablet. You get it burned onto a tag. Sometimes onto your skin. It doesn't hurt as much as it should. Maybe that's the scariest part. At first, you still answer to your old name, instinctively, when someone from your village gets dragged in, or when a guard mocks you in your mother tongue. But that fades, week by week. The others don't know you from before, and honestly, they don't care. To them, you're the one with the limp, or the guy with the fast left hook, or the one who pukes every morning before drills. It starts to sink in that whatever you were, farmer, thief, merchant, father, is gone, not just taken, erased. No one in the crowd knows your story. No one in the dorm remembers your real laugh, and you forget what your sister's voice sounded like, how old you are, what day it is, what you meant. It's not like dying, it's slower, like melting, like watching paint fade until the wall forgets it was ever red. Sometimes in your dreams, you call out your real name, and no one answers, not even yourself. Because here, identity isn't a soul, it's a silhouette. And even that can be swapped out by morning. You step into the light, and they scream. Not for you. Not really. Not for who you are or even what you've done. They scream because you're next, another flicker in their day-long show. Another splash of color on the sand. They don't see you, not your fear, not your cracked ribs or your trembling knees. They see a helmet, a weapon, a spectacle. You're not a man. You're a moment. You hear laughter when you stumble. Cheers when your opponent lands a hit. Not quiet encouragement, roaring joy. Some chant for blood before you've even lifted your sword. Others wave tokens, betting coins, some with children beside them, whispering guesses like it's a game he won't last 5 minutes. I bet he cries. Look at his legs too thin. You see a boy grinning, holding roasted chestnuts in one hand and mimicking your moves with a wooden stick. He's not cruel. He's entertained. And that's worse. The crowd came early, ate their lunch on the benches, gossiped about politics between fights, then leaned forward eagerly when your name, know your number, was announced. They want drama, twists, close calls. They want to gasp. They want to cheer. And above all, they want to forget that they are just flesh and bone like you. Your suffering is their release. Your death their applause. When you fall, they might clap, or boo if it wasn't exciting enough. If you fight well, they may remember your style, your posture, your flair, but not your name, not your voice, not your prayers whispered in the dark. And when they leave, they'll talk about the weather, about the next match, about the wine vendor's prices. You'll be swept away, blood hosed off, replaced, because in this place you're not a person. You're part of the set. He doesn't yell. He doesn't need to. The lanista watches from the edge of the yard, arms crossed, eyes, steady expression, carved from stone. You don't know his first name. He never says it. No one dares ask. To him, you're not a man. You're a project, a number, a line in a ledger. He tracks bruises like expenses, measures progress like coin weight. He watches your swing, not for grace but for value. If you lag, he marks it. If you struggle, he notes it. And when you fall behind too many times, he doesn't scream. He just leans over to a scribe and says a word. Maybe transfer, maybe sale, maybe bait. You hear rumors, some sent away to the mines, others made to train newcomers as live targets. They say being sold is mercy, because staying means disappointment, and disappointment doesn't last long here. His eyes find you mid-drill, a flicker of disapproval. Your stomach knots. Not because he'll punish you today, but because he might decide you're no longer worth fixing. You start to dread that look more than any blade. It's quiet, but final. Like a door closing, not loud, just locked. He doesn't speak unless needed. And when he does, you listen. Even if the words aren't cruel, they don't have to be. Because being acknowledged means you still matter, even as property. You forget the sound of freedom. Because when someone else controls your food, your sleep, your pain, even your death. What is freedom anyway? Sometimes when he passes by, you straighten your back just a little more. Not out of respect, out of fear that he's already decided you're not worth feeding this month, that his silence means your story's over. Not with a sword, but with a glance. It always starts the same. A slip, a hit, a crack across the jaw. And then metal. Not from the blade. From you, the taste floods in fast, warm, sharp, tinged with salt, thicker than water, familiar. You've bit your cheek again. Or maybe it's your tongue. Or maybe the inside of your lips split open from the impact. You don't check, you just swallow. Because stopping to spit means breaking the rhythm, means showing weakness. And in this place, blood belongs inside or gone. At first, it churns your stomach, the iron tang clinging to the roof of your mouth, The nausea blooming as you try to breathe through your nose because your mouth is occupied by pain, by panic, by the taste of your own body turning on itself. But by the third week, you barely flinch. The others don't. They keep moving, keep training, keep gulping it down like bad wine. The instructors don't react either. They just toss a cloth at you or nod to the corner where water sits in a wooden bucket, tinted red from the last guy who used it. You start to know the difference. Blood from the gums is thinner. From the nose, saltier. From the throat, scary. But eventually, it all blends into a routine. Like breakfast, like tying your sandals, like pain. You catch yourself once swirling it before swallowing. Like mouthwash. You almost laugh. Almost. But then someone next to you coughs. A hard sound. Wet. They double over and a spray hits the dirt. Deep red. Too dark to be fresh. Too thick to be spit. No one reacts. Not even him. He wipes his mouth, straightens up, keeps going. That's when you realize it's not just your mouth. It's inside now. The violence, the erosion. You wonder if the taste will ever go away. If someday, far from here, you'll still catch it in the back of your throat like a phantom limb. Because once blood becomes routine, what part of you is still yours? You've heard the stories. Lions, tigers, bears dragged in from distant provinces, snarling, starving. Loosed into the arena with a roar and a promise of spectacle. But most days, they don't come. Wild animals are expensive, hard to tame, harder to transport. And when they do appear, they're often chained, drugged, or wounded. You think that's the worst it gets. A wild beast lunging at you under the hot sun fangs, bared claws tearing. But it isn't, because beasts don't hate. They don't calculate. They don't whisper your name with contempt the night before. Only people do that. Your real fear, it isn't the lion. It's the man who slept beside you last week. The one who shared your bread, helped you bandage a cut, laughed at your jokes, and now stands across from you, sword-raised eyes cold. He didn't choose this either. But now that it's happening, he wants to win. And if he has to split your skull to do it, he won't blink. You've seen it before. Friends who joke together in the yard, now trying to choke each other into stillness, while thousands cheer. And afterward, they eat. Hands still stained, mouth still chewing. No shame, no sorrow. Because the only other option is being them, the one cooling on the sand. You realize something then. The animals are innocent. They attack from instinct, survival. But men can enjoy it, can plan it, can hurt slowly, on purpose. You've seen it in the eyes of some champions. Not just hunger, but delight. The way they pause before the final blow. Hold it, let the crowd wait, let you feel the fear stretch until it snaps. And still you train beside them. Still you nod goodnight, because here trust gets you killed, faster than any beast. You used to think a quick death was a blessing. You even wished for it. On nights when your legs ached, when the whip lines across your back pulsed like fire, when the smell of blood wouldn't leave your nose. You thought if it comes, let it be fast, let it be done. But then you saw him. He wasn't special, just another fighter, barely trained, thrown in to fill the schedule. He took a blade to the gut, deep, ugly, but not fatal. Not yet. He fell to his knees. Didn't scream at first, just gasped, like he couldn't believe it, like his body was arguing with itself. Not now. Not yet. Then came the sound, a wet, choking rasp. Then the scream, high, raw, too human. He clutched at his stomach, trying to hold it in, literally, like if he just pressed hard enough, he could stop dying. But it didn't work. Of course it didn't. The crowd roared. Not in horror and excitement. They thought it was a performance, a flourish, theatrical agony. Some even laughed, cheered, threw crumbs. You watched, frozen. Fingers clenched so tight, you dug your nails into your palms. It went on for 15 minutes. 15. No one stopped it. There was no mercy blade, no closing curtain, just the slow unraveling of a body that didn't want to die, but couldn't survive. When it was finally over, a pair of attendants dragged him off. One by the ankles, one by the wrists. His head bounced once on the stone. They didn't look at his face. Neither did the crowd. By the time the next match began, his blood had already dried in the sun. You didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear, not exactly, but because now you knew death wasn't the worst part. Dying was. And if your time came, you didn't want to be brave. or noble, or dignified. You just wanted it fast. You weren't captured, you weren't sold, you signed your name. That's what makes you different. You were an auctoratus, a voluntary gladiator, or so the papers say. But voluntary is a strange word when your children are starving, when your debts outweigh your body, when the cold feels sharper than any blade, and the only thing thinner than your cloak is your pride. No one becomes a gladiator for fun, not even you. They offered you a contract, gold on parchment, meals, a roof, training. All you had to do was give up everything. Your rights, your name, your citizenship. They branded you. Iron against flesh. A mark that said property now. Not of the state, but of a man, a lanista. And the crowd loved it. Look, they'd whisper, he chose this. As brave as he is mad. A Roman who fights like a slave. They watched you with different eyes. Not pity, curiosity. Like a pet that suddenly bit back. Like a senator wearing rags. Your pain was novelty, a new kind of entertainment. You remember the first time they called your name. Not a number, not a nickname. Your name, and then they shouted it again, louder. Because they knew you had walked into this, not been dragged. But they didn't know what it cost. What you gave up. They didn't see your last loaf of bread. Or the sleeping mat you sold. Or the nights you slept under temple steps, waiting for the recruiter to return. To them, you were a thrill, a twist. A voluntary soul who bled like all the rest. But you knew better. You weren't brave, you were hungry, you were cold, you were tired of begging. So you signed, and now when your blade meets another's, you wonder if he signed too. If you're both here because this world left you no other door except the one with a lock on the inside. You thought the worst thing would be dying. Now you know better. The worst thing is being allowed to live. After the fight, after the sand dries, after the blood is wiped, after the crowd spills back into the city, buzzing about how thrilling it all was, you're still standing. Not because you won, but because you performed. You didn't die well. You lived well for them. The lanista nods, the crowd chants your name. Even the guards look impressed. You feel nothing. Later they call it a reward. They say you've earned another chance. You'll fight again, soon. Because death in the arena, that's a climax. A spectacle, but keeping you alive means more shows, more tickets, more coins. You're not a hero, you're an asset, so they keep you fed. Not out of kindness, but maintenance. They stitch your wounds, sharpen your gear, mark your name on another poster. And each time you survive, you climb higher in their esteem, but sink deeper in their grip. You're the reliable one, the seasoned one, the favorite to survive just long enough. One veteran once whispered to you in the dark, his breath sour with old blood, don't be proud of surviving. The ones who die, they get to rest. He had won 14 matches. His eyes were gray with something beyond fear, a kind of exhaustion you only earn when you've tasted death and been spat back out. You understand now. Victory doesn't set you free. It binds you. Every survival is another debt. Another reason to be summoned. Another contract you never signed but can't escape. So you start to wonder, is death really the punishment? Or is it the release? Because as long as you're alive, you're still gladiating, still performing, still watched, still owned. And death, it doesn't come closer. But it never really leaves. It sits in the front row, waiting, smiling. You thought you'd fight. That was the deal. Gladiators fight. But this isn't that. This is venatio, animal hunt. Except you're not the hunter. Not even the opponent. You're the part they don't name on the schedule, the bait. They tell you the night before. Not gently. Just a knock, a name, and a number. You don't sleep after that. Because you've heard the stories. You've seen what's left when the beasts are done. Next morning, you're taken aside. No armor, no shield. Just light clothes so the audience can see the blood better. Your hands are tied loosely. Just enough to make you clumsy. Just enough to remind the crowd you're not supposed to win. And then they open the gate. The sun hits first, blinding. Then the noise, a wall of sound, drums, shouts, laughter. And across the arena, a gate opens. A lion, big, real, angry. You expect a roar. There isn't one. Just a low growl like it's already tasted you in its mind. You try to run, but the sand slips under your feet. Your balance fails. Your breath catches. The crowd loves it. Some bet on the minute. Some bet on the limb. how fast you'll fall, what part will go first. You scream, not for help, just out of sheer disbelief, because this isn't combat, it's humiliation, it's theater, and your role is the scream. You survive 30 seconds, maybe a minute. You don't remember, just a blur of fur, a flash of claws, the sound of fabric and skin tearing, then pain blinding everywhere. They drag you out before you die, sometimes, if you're lucky, to clean you up, stitch you, maybe use you again next week. But sometimes they don't, because the beast has to eat and you're cheaper than meat. You understand now, it wasn't about the fight. Never was. It was about how loud they could make the crowd cheer before you stopped moving, and how little you mattered once you did. You won, again and again. The crowd knows your name now. It echoes across stone, carved into wooden signs, painted on alley walls. You hear it in the streets, kids mimicking your stance, old men placing bets with your face in mind. And for that, they give you gifts. A golden bracelet, a coin purse, a feast once. They call you a star, a hero, a symbol of strength. But only in here. You ask to leave. They laugh. Freedom, that's not part of the show. Because you're valuable now. Not as a man, but as a product. You're the guaranteed draw. The main event. The name that fills the seats. So they keep you clean, well-fed, sharpened. They dress you better. Let you sleep in a softer cell. Assign servants to you, not friends, not family, just people paid to keep you upright until the next match. Sometimes they even let you speak in public. But only what's scripted. Tell the crowd how proud you are, how you chose this life, how glorious it is to bleed for them. You smile, you nod, you lie. Because the truth, you're still not free. Your chains just glint now. You don't train with the others anymore. You're too precious for that. But you're still watched, guarded, restricted. You're paraded before matches, not as a fighter, as a mascot. A reminder to the others when, enough. And maybe you'll end up like him. But you know, you are the warning, not the prize. They want you just healthy enough, just angry enough, just scared enough to keep drawing blood on cue. And one day when you finally fall, the crowd will cheer louder than ever. Because even stars burn out better when they've been kept on a leash. They say you've earned a reward. Not gold, not rest, not even a night without fear. They dress you up, not in armor and oils. Your skin glistens, your muscles shine. You look like a statue, and that's exactly what they want. You are not a guest, you are not a man. You are decoration. The villa smells of honeyed wine, figs, perfume. Laughter rolls through marble halls, and you are ushered in like a prized bull, something exotic, dangerous, but ultimately tame. They clap, not because they respect you, but because you make them feel powerful. To stand so close to death and see it behave. You stand beside the tables, flex, turn, perform. A senator's daughter pokes your arm and giggles. Someone grabs your waist and jokes about your sword. A drunk noble shouts for you to wrestle another man, not to the death, just until someone cries. You do it, because you must. There's food on the table, but none for you. You stand and sweat and wait. Later, if the wine flows too freely, you might be asked to stay, to entertain in ways no arena ever taught you. You've heard what happens then. Sometimes it's over quickly, sometimes not. You are a reward for them. But for you, it's another fight you didn't train for. Another night you survive without ever being allowed to live. In the morning you're sent back. No thanks, no coin, no eye contact, just another gate slamming shut behind you. Just another breath you wish you didn't have to take. You return to the ludus, not stronger, not honored, but hollow, because the arena may break your bones. But this breaks whatever was left of your dignity. You win. The crowd roars, your opponent bleeds, and afterward, someone presses coins into your hand. It's more than you've ever held. Heavy, shiny, real. They say it's a reward, a mark of honor, proof that you're rising. But when you return to the ludus, your home, your cage, you realize something. You have nowhere to spend it. There is no market for gladiators, no shop for the shackled, no vendor who sets up inside the stone walls of the training yard. You can't buy better food, can't pay for a night off, can't send it home if you even remember where that is. All you can do is count it. And wait, sometimes they let you keep it in a pouch, sometimes in a box they control. Sometimes they just tell you it's recorded, safe. Don't worry, but you do, because what good is gold if it can't touch your life? You dream of freedom, of saving enough to buy your release. They say it's possible. Some did it, but no one can tell you how much enough is. And the rules change. Win more, earn more, and they raise the price. Because they don't want to lose you. You're an investment, a coin-generating machine. Why would they sell the goose that still bleeds gold? So you keep fighting, keep winning, keep collecting numbers that mean nothing inside a world with no doors. You imagine walking into a bakery, buying a warm loaf, handing over a denarius, and being smiled at, not stared at, like a beast, on two legs. But that's fantasy. Here in the real world, you sit on your bunk, your fingers brush against your coin pouch, and your stomach growls. Because tonight, like every night, you'll eat the same stew. You'll wear the same torn tunic. You'll sleep on the same wooden board beneath the same moon that glows over a city you're not allowed to walk in. And if you die tomorrow, your pouch won't follow you. Someone else will spend your reward. Someone who never bled for it, never fought for it, never earned it. You are rich, and you are starving. That's the kind of math only a gladiator understands. You sit alone, a scrap of wax tablet in your hand, a dull stylus, a trembling thought. They told you somewhere out there your sister still lives. Your mother, maybe. And today, for reasons even you don't understand, you write. You write not as a gladiator, but as the boy you used to be. You write like you're still someone worth remembering. Mother, I hope you are well. The words look strange on the tablet. Stiff, formal, like they belong to someone else. You continue. You try to sound strong. Try to make it sound like you chose this life. Try to make it sound like you're not afraid. You tell her about the food, the routine, the victories, but not the screams, not the nights, not the way your shoulder still clicks from a fight last year. You ask if she's still in the same house, if your brother got taller, if the fig tree still grows by the door. You seal the letter, hand it to a guard, hope stupidly that he'll send it. He nods, takes the tablet, says nothing. You never hear back. Days pass, then weeks, then months. You write again and again. 7 years go by, no reply, not even once. Maybe the letters never left. Maybe she moved. Maybe she died. Maybe she never learned to read. You don't know. But still you write, because it's the only part of you they haven't taken yet. Your voice, your memories, your need to be someone to someone outside these walls. Some nights you whisper the words instead, to the ceiling, to the gods, to anyone who might be listening. Because even if no one answers, at least for a moment you remember who you were, and that in a place like this is the closest thing to freedom. You've taken a hit, a deep one. Not the kind you can walk off, not the kind you can hide. They drag you into the corner room, the one that smells like metal and vinegar, where the air is thick with old sweat and dried blood. The medicus waits there. He doesn't smile. He doesn't ask your name. He doesn't need to. He's seen your face before, screaming, bleeding, twitching. He's the only man here who's ever touched you without trying to kill you. And still you flinch when he comes close. He says nothing, just gestures. You lie down. Wooden table, cold, sticky. Your shirt is torn away, the wound exposed. He doesn't clean it gently. He pours vinegar. You hiss, clench your teeth. He hands you a strip of cloth. You'll want to bite this, he says flatly. Then the needle comes out, thick, curved. No anesthesia, no mercy. Just stitches, fast, crude, efficient. His hands move like they've done this 1,000 times. Because they have. He knows where to press, how deep to dig, how long before the screaming stops. And when it does, he pats your shoulder. Just once. The only tenderness you've felt in months, maybe years. It's not kindness. It's not affection. It's routine. Muscle memory. The ritual of keeping something alive long enough to die properly, later. You think about that pat, later. Alone in your bunk. Because it's the closest thing you've had to a hug. Here no one touches you unless they must. To strike, to shove, to cut. No embraces, no comforting hands. No one brushing sweat from your brow, unless it's to check if you're still worth saving. And yet, the medicus touched you. Held your shoulder still as he closed your skin, with thread and silence. It hurt. But it made you feel real again. Like maybe you still have a body, still take up space, still exist. Tomorrow, you'll fight again. Scarred, sore, sewn together. But tonight, you fall asleep remembering the one man who held you still, not to harm but to keep you from falling apart. You fall asleep eventually, not because you're relaxed, but because your body has collapsed from exhaustion. The room is dark, just the creak of bunk beds, the faint breathing of men too tired to fear. And then it starts. The dream. You're in the arena. Again. The sand is wet with something that smells familiar. You run. But your legs don't move right. Your sword is gone. The crowd is silent, and something is chasing you. You can't see its face, but you know it. You've met it before. It catches up. You scream, but no sound comes out. Only blood. You wake up, heart racing, skin damp, mouth dry. Across the room, someone else screams. Maybe it's you, maybe it's not. No one says anything. No one asks, "Are you okay?" This is the ludus. Not a home, not a place for comfort, just a holding pen for men learning how to die well. You lie back down, try to slow your breath, try to remember how to feel safe. But the room doesn't help. The stone walls feel tighter. The shadows feel thicker. And the silence? It isn't peace, it's pressure. Like the whole place is waiting for you to break. Morning comes, and you rise. No one mentions the night. No one needs to. You saw the way their shoulders twitched, the way their eyes avoided yours. You weren't the only one chased by ghosts, but out in the yard, with swords in hand, you'd never know. They joke, they fight, they bleed, and they pretend like they didn't just relive their worst moments with their eyes closed. You wonder if the dreams will stop. They don't. Some nights it's your first kill. Some nights it's your friend's scream. Some nights it's your own name, the one you barely remember echoing in a voice you no longer recognize. You don't tell anyone. They wouldn't care. They have their own ghost to dodge. So you learn to live with it, to fight by day and be hunted by night. Because in the ludus, even sleep is not your own. They say some gladiators had lovers, that their names were whispered by Roman women in silk-lined villas between bites of figs and gossip. They say your sweat was more intoxicating than wine, that your scars were symbols of virility, that your silence was alluring. But you know better, because when she enters the one in perfume and pearls, you're not allowed to speak. You're already washed, oiled, presented, like a gift, wrapped in your own skin. She doesn't ask your name, doesn't care. She laughs, touches your arm, traces a finger over your shoulder. Such strong shoulders, she says. You nod. You've heard it before. From her. From others. They don't come for conversation. They come because they can. Because you can't say no. You don't flinch anymore. Not when they undress you. Not when they comment on the curve of your back or the firmness of your grip. You've learned to dissociate, to be present but absent, a body but not a person. The night passes. The candles flicker. She sleeps. You don't. You stare at the ceiling, counting cracks, wondering what she'll tell her friends. That she had you, that you're divine, that gladiators grunt, not speak. In the morning, you're sent back. No goodbye, no pay, just a nod from the servant as you walk past. At the ludus, you are greeted by the clang of metal, the bark of the trainer, the same routine. You are not special, not different. You are muscle, a distraction, a temporary indulgence for someone who'll never know your dreams, your fears, your real name, and still, some call this love. You laugh, quietly, to yourself, because in this world the only love you get comes with orders with perfume and a door that locks when they're done with you. There's a whisper in the dark, not a threat, not a prayer, just a question passed from bunk to bunk like a secret, too fragile for daylight. How would you do it? You know what they mean. Not escape, not fight back. They're talking about ending it, by your own hand. Because here in this place, where your name is forgotten and your body is owned, the only thing truly yours is how you might leave. Some try to hide nails under mattresses, rusty bent things pulled from walls or stolen from training gear. They whisper about swallowing them. 1, 2, 3, letting them tear through the gut before morning comes. Others choose the wall, a run, a slam headfirst, again and again until everything blinks out like a snuffed lamp. One man tried to bite his wrists open. Another simply stopped eating. The lanista doesn't call it despair. He calls it disobedience, a waste of investment, an act against the gods. So if you're caught trying, you're beaten. Sometimes chained, sometimes branded again, a reminder that not even death is yours to command. But the whispers don't stop. They get quieter, sharper, like the edge of a thought you're not supposed to think. You see it in their eyes, on mornings before a match. That distant look, the weight in their breath. They're counting not the steps to the arena, but how many chances they missed to take the choice back into their own hands. You've thought about it too? Of course you have. Not because you're weak, but because you're tired. Because you've lost count of how many days you've survived when survival no longer feels like a victory. And still you wake up, you train, you eat the porridge, you nod when spoken to. You wait, maybe not for death, but for the moment when the idea of ending things feels less like a sin and more like freedom. In the ludus, dying in the arena is a spectacle. Dying by your own choice is an act of rebellion, quiet, lonely, and for many, the first real decision they've made in years. You think swords are the danger, blades, fangs, claws, but then comes winter, and you realize there are slower ways to die. The ludus doesn't change with the seasons. The stone floor stays stone. The walls stay damp. The air slips through every crack like a thief with cold fingers. You're given one blanket, rough, thin, smells like mold and sweat, too short to cover your feet. You try to curl, try to press yourself into the corner, into the warmth of your own body, as if that will protect you. It doesn't. You shake, teeth clack. Your breath fogs the air like smoke, but there's no fire. Not for you. The wealthy have braziers, wool cloaks, hot wine. You have cracked lips and a cough that won't go away. Some nights you don't sleep. You just tremble, quietly, because if the guards hear you, they'll laugh. Or worse, they'll tell you to stop being weak. So you hide your shivers. You hide the rattle in your chest, the burning in your throat, the ache in your bones that no sword ever gave you. And when someone doesn't wake up in the morning, no one gasps, no one cries. The body is carried out before the sun finishes rising. Too soft, someone mutters. Wasn't built for this. And that's the end of it. No burial, no name. Just one less body taking up space. You pull your blanket tighter, wish for more. Dare not ask. You learn tricks. Sleep near the center of the room. Lie next to the man who sweats too much. Breathe slow. Move less. Conserve heat like it's coin. Because here warmth is wealth. And you're broke. It's not the cold itself that kills. It's the way it creeps, quiet, patient, night after night, until your lungs stop fighting back. They say gladiators are fearless, that you stare death in the eye. But no one talks about this death, the one that comes, not with a roar, but with a whisper, and no audience. You don't get a sword of your own. That's the first thing they tell you. No weapons are assigned. No armory gleaming with fresh steel. No locker with your name etched in bronze. What you get is what's left behind. A gladius with a nick in the edge, a shield with the paint scraped off, a helmet that smells like old blood and sour breath. You pick it up and it's still warm. Not from the forge, but from the last man who held it. You ask the trainer, whose was this? He shrugs. Does it matter? You don't ask again, because the truth is, most of the gear here has a history. Not the kind told in stories, but the kind etched in rust and dried marrow. There are not enough weapons to go around, so you wait your turn. Your group shares 2 helmets, 3 wooden swords, 1 chipped greave, and when your turn comes, you grip the hilt and feel a stickiness that never quite washed off. Some try to clean it, scrub with straw, rinse in cold water, mutter a prayer. But it lingers, the smell, the weight, the knowing. This was used by a man who did not walk back. This is the last thing he held before his fingers went limp and his name slipped from every mouth. You don't tell anyone, but sometimes when you hold the shield close, you swear you can still feel the tremble of his arm, as if the panic seeped into the leather and stayed there. You wonder if someone will use yours one day, if you'll sweat into a helmet only for another man to pull it on tomorrow, if your blood will be wiped just enough to pass for clean. Here nothing is wasted, not food, not time, not gear. Everything gets reused, everything gets recycled, even fear. You train with it anyway, because you must, because there's no other option. But deep down, you know this is a dead man's sword, and you grip it tight, because if you don't, you might be the next one to pass it on. You twist your ankle during drills. It swells, turns purple. Each step feels like stepping on fire. But you don't say a word, because here pain is weakness. And weakness gets noticed, and once you're noticed, you're at risk. There's no sympathy in the ludus. Not from the trainers, not from the guards, not from the other fighters. You limp, you're soft, you wince. You're not worth the feed, so you bite down. Smile when it cracks, laugh when it bleeds. Even when your insides scream. You pretend. Some become good at it. Masters of hiding, broken ribs, and fractured fingers. Of stuffing rags into sandals to cushion a shattered heel. A few even train with cracked skulls. Because if you sit out too long, you're no longer part of the rotation. You're no longer profitable. And when you're no longer profitable, you're a liability. They might sell you to another ludus, or to the mines, or worse, to a show meant for quick deaths. Sometimes they don't bother. A quiet order, a final blow behind the kitchen. Cheaper than treatment. You remember Cassius, strong, fast, but tore something in his shoulder. He kept whispering that it would heal, kept coming to drills. One morning he didn't show up. His bunk was cleaned by noon. No one asked where he went. Pain here is not a message, it's a test. And if you flinch, you fail. So you learn the art of silence, of gritting your teeth so hard they chip, of walking with perfect posture, even when every step is agony. You become fluent in hiding what hurts. Because saying it hurts isn't just forbidden, it's fatal. There's a bathhouse, if you can call it that, a stone room always damp, smelling of rust and skin. In the center, a shallow basin water gone gray from too many wounds. You wait your turn. No one rushes. Because no one looks forward to this. It isn't cleansing. It isn't soothing. There's no soap, no olive oil, just a handful of coarse sand to scrape off the worst of the day. You crouch beside the basin, dip your hands. The water is lukewarm, thick with the echo of every body that touched it before. You see blood in it, not always red, sometimes brown, sometimes darker. You tell yourself it's not from anyone you know. A man beside you mutters, "Better not open your eyes too wide." He splashes once, then walks away. You stay, because you have to. The rules say you wash after training, even if you're bleeding, especially if you're bleeding. Because flies are a nuisance, and infections are bad for business. So you scrub. With sand, with shame, not to get clean, but to appear less dirty. The grit cuts open scabs you'd hoped had healed. The sting reminds you that your body is still yours. Sort of. There are no towels, no privacy. You dry in the open air. Let the cold cling to you like regret. Sometimes you wonder what a real bath feels like. Hot water, alone. Steam rising like a ghost from your shoulders. But that's not this. Not here. Here you wash your hands in the water of another man's death. And you never really feel clean. You hear someone laugh. It stops you. Not because it's funny, but because it's rare. A short, sharp sound, half choked, half mistake. Like a memory that slipped out when it wasn't supposed to. It's gone in an instant, replaced by silence. And the tightening of jaws. Because here, laughter is dangerous. Laughter is a distraction. Laughter is a reminder that you used to be someone who could afford joy. No one makes jokes anymore. No one tells stories just to be silly. Every word is functional, sharp, efficient, like the blades you train with. You don't tease, you don't play, because a smile might cost you focus, and focus is what keeps your skull intact. You try once months ago, said something dumb during mealtime, something about how the stew always tastes like mud. One man chuckled, another glared. You were made to scrub the latrine that night, without rest, without gloves. No one's laughed since, and now, you forget what it felt like, that flutter in your chest, that ache in your cheeks, that warm swell that rises when joy bubbles up before reason can stop it. Your face has learned stillness. Your eyes hold only caution. Your mouth knows only commands and silence. Sometimes you try at night to smile in the dark, just to remember what it feels like, but the muscles don't respond, like they've been repurposed for something else, something harder, heavier. You wonder if you'll ever laugh again. Not the bark of a madman in a ring, not the smirk of someone who survived, but a real laugh. The kind that says you're safe. The kind that says you're human. Here there's no room for that. Here joy is weakness, and weakness bleeds. So you wear your serious face, your mask of control, your perfect unreadable quiet. Because even your laughter belongs to someone else now. And you've forgotten the punchline. You learn to sleep with your back against the wall. Not because it's more comfortable, but because it's harder to be stabbed that way. Here the arena isn't the only place you bleed. Whispers move faster than footsteps, and poison doesn't care how well you trained. Someone once said the blade that kills you might be dipped in stew, not sweat. You laughed, at least inside. But then it happened. A man strong clever dropped mid-meal, convulsing, choking on foam and bile, gone before the bread cooled. They said it was bad meat, but no one else got sick. And he was next in line for a match worth coin. Now someone else is? You stop sharing food after that. You stop sharing anything. Even words, even glances. Because trust in here is just another way to let your guard down. And no one survives long by lowering their guard. There are men you fought beside, bled beside, pulled to safety when the weights pinned them down. But if tomorrow they're told to fight you, they'll aim for the throat, without blinking. Because mercy is not part of the training. Survival is. You watch your bunkmate as he sharpens his blade a little too long, a little too late at night. He doesn't look at you, but he doesn't have to. You feel it. That cold weight of maybe in every silence. Sometimes the walls whisper your name. Sometimes you wonder if the next hand on your shoulder will be the last. So you walk softly, sleep lightly, and never eat first. You never ask why someone didn't show up at drills. You never look too long at empty beds. Because the answer is always the same. He let someone close, and they got closer. Here in this place, your enemy doesn't wear armor. He wears your smile, your handshake, your memory of a man you once trusted. And in the end, it's not the arena that kills you. It's the space between your spine and the sound of someone just one step too close. They said it wasn't real, just a performance, just for show. The crowd wanted drama, not a massacre. And so some matches were staged, a dance of blades, a ritual of near misses, a rehearsal of death with no curtain call. But no one ever told you where the script ended and real blood began. You step into the arena knowing the signals, the rhythm, the story you're meant to tell. A slash here, a dodge there, a tumble with just enough flair. And your partner, you've trained with him. Shared bread, shared bruises. You know how he moves, how hard he hits when he's holding back. But today, his strikes land harder. His eyes don't blink, and something sharp grazes your side that wasn't supposed to. You stumble. He steps forward, not back. And for a moment, you're no longer in a play. You're in a real fight. You parry late. You bleed early. The crowd cheers louder. Because they don't know, or maybe they do. And they love it. You wonder, did someone pay him? Did he hate you enough? Or did he just want the spotlight a little longer? You try to fall gracefully, like you've practiced, but your leg doesn't bend that way anymore. And the sand tastes like iron. You hear a voice, yours, saying the line, "This is all pretend." But the pain in your ribs argues otherwise. You survive, barely. And when the fight ends, he helps you up, whispers sorry. But not like he means it. More like he knows he got away with it, because no one's punishing anyone. The crowd had a good time. You gave them drama, and that's all that matters. Later, back in the barracks, you look at your scar. It'll stay. A reminder that in this place, even the fake things can kill you. Because sometimes the most dangerous fight is the one that pretends not to be. You respected him. Not just as a fighter, but as a man. He taught you how to wrap your hands tighter, how to shift your weight just before the blow, how to breathe through pain without showing it. He wasn't your friend. There are no friends in the ludus, but in a place where kindness was rationed like wine, he gave more than most. So when they called your names, when they paired you in the next fight, you hoped it was a mistake. You looked at him, he looked back, and he nodded. That slow, steady nod that said, "We both know the rules." You don't remember the fight, just flashes. The weight of the shield, the sound of leather snapping, the sting in your arm. And then his face, closer than it should be. Eyes wide, mouth open, a sound caught in his throat. Your blade was already in him, not deep, but deep enough. He dropped to his knees, not like he was weak, like he was tired of standing. You rushed to hold him, but it wasn't allowed. The crowd roared, not for him, not for you, for the ending. They thought it was theater. You knew it wasn't. Later, when the sun dipped low and the training yard quieted, you sat alone. You replayed the fight 100 times, but you couldn't remember what blow had landed, right or wrong. Just the final look, like forgiveness, without the words. You never spoke of it, no one asked. He wasn't famous, he wasn't missed, but for weeks after you found his habits still echoing in your hands. The way he rolled his shoulder before a strike, the way he checked the dirt for loose stones. And sometimes, when you closed your eyes, you saw him nod again. Not in approval, not in blame, just there. Like the echo of something you wish you could take back, but can't, because no one ever taught you how to keep fighting after the fight was over. Your hands used to build walls, cradles, a stool for your daughter, though you don't remember the color anymore. You were a carpenter, not a famous one, not rich, but steady, the kind of man who measured twice and cut once, who could feel the grain of wood with just a thumb and know which way it wanted to bend. You were proud of that. Now your thumb is numb. From calluses, from cold, from too many hours gripping a gladius that never fit your palm the way a chisel did. They don't call you by your name. No one asks what you were before, because it doesn't matter. Before doesn't exist here. Only what you can do now. Only how you fight. You used to smooth corners. Now you aim for soft tissue. You used to carve handles. Now you split fingers. You once helped build a roof for a neighbor's home. You remember laughing when the beam slipped, when your friend cursed and nearly fell. That was a good day. No one falls like that here. They fall hard, and they don't get up. Sometimes, when you clean your gear, you catch yourself running your fingers along the grain of your wooden shield. You think about sanding it, polishing it, making it beautiful. And then someone yells, and you're back. Back in the stink of sweat and fear. Back where your worth is measured in how fast you can maim. You wonder if your old tools still exist, if someone else is using them now, or if they've been soul-burned, forgotten, like you. They called you Hands of Skill once. Now they call you Blade number 27. The irony, you're better at this than you were at woodworking. Killing came quicker than crafting, and that shames you more than any scar on your body, because in here, you're not a man with hands. You're a weapon with legs, and no one polishes a weapon to admire it, only to use it. You had a mother. She had a name. She once brushed crumbs off your cheek with the side of her thumb. She used to hum when she cooked. You don't remember the tune, but you remember that it made the kitchen feel safe. That was how long ago? Now you wake up in a stone room with 12 other men, all pretending they don't dream, because dreams lead to thoughts, and thoughts lead to weakness. You don't speak of her. No one does. No one speaks of anything before this place. One man tried, a new recruit. Couldn't have been more than 17. He said his mother had a crooked smile. He said she once told him he could do anything, even fly if he believed hard enough. Then he took a sword to the stomach. He fell writhing, and in the last moments before his body gave out, he called for her. Mother, just once, soft. Like a prayer no God had time to answer. No one said anything. Someone dragged his body away before the blood dried. By evening his bed was filled again. His name wasn't spoken again. You don't even remember it. That's the part that terrifies you. Not that he died. You all will. But that he lived and still disappeared. Sometimes late at night, you try to remember your mother's face. Not just the shape, but the life behind it. What made her laugh? What she smelled like when she hugged you after a long day. But the memory doesn't come easy. It flickers, like a candle in a tunnel. And then it's gone. So you stop trying. Because every time you do, you feel something crack inside you. And you can't afford cracks here. Here you're not someone's son. You're not someone's anything. You're muscle. You're movement. You're a name that's been forgotten even by the voice that once whispered it into your ear at night. You once had a mother. But now, even you can barely prove it. You had a name once, a real one. Maybe it was Julian or Marcus. Something your mother whispered into your hair the day you were born. Something warm. Something yours. Now they call you Rang Vo Chip Tooth. Because one day during training, your face met a shield and your incisor cracked in half. You spat the shard onto the dirt. Didn't cry, didn't flinch, but someone laughed, and the name stuck. Hey, Rang Vo. Move your feet, Rang Vo, you call that a swing. The others chuckle, not because it's funny, but because it's safer than staying silent. No one uses your real name anymore. You've stopped saying it to yourself, Because what good is a name when no one believes it belongs to you? You're not alone. There's Ty, cut an old man missing half an ear. Matt Lack, a boy whose eyes don't quite meet yours. Mom Rach, whose lip was torn in his second fight and never stitched properly. Some of the names come from guards, some from the crowd, some from the men you sleep beside. Sometimes it's cruel, sometimes it's just easy. Because if you don't give someone a name, they disappear. But if you give them a name that mocks their weakness, you never have to think of them as human again. You become your flaw, your injury, the thing that makes you different, the thing they can point to and say, "That one, I remember him." But they don't remember you with admiration. They remember you like they remember a joke, a scar, an accident they couldn't look away from. Your real name, it's there somewhere, tucked behind the cracked tooth and the tightening in your chest whenever you hear them call for you. Sometimes just before sleep you whisper it into your pillow, just to keep it alive, just to make sure the dirt hasn't stolen it yet. But the next morning, you wake up, step out onto the training ground, and someone shouts, "Rang Vo, ready to bleed today," and you nod, because that's who you are now. Not a man, not a memory, just a nickname no one will care to carve on your tomb. You didn't die. That should have been good news. Your blood soaked into the sand, yes, but your chest still rose and fell. You limped off the arena floor alive, but no one clapped. Not even a polite murmur. The same crowd that screamed your name last week, "Kill, kill," now turned away. You didn't fall with flair. You didn't bleed beautifully. You lost. And worse, you lived through it. You're no longer the star. No longer the one to watch. Now you're the one who flinched. The one who hit the ground too early. The one who got up too late. In the Ludus they call you Thang Gutch. Not out loud. Not yet. But the way they glance at you when weapons are handed out, that says enough. Your next match, it won't be against another man. It'll be against an animal. A lion maybe, or a boar. They'll say it's a chance to redeem yourself. But really, it's punishment wrapped in ceremony. You've gone from gladiator to prop, from sword to scenery. The lanista doesn't scold you. He doesn't have to. You've already been marked. On the roster, your name shifts downward. Lower tier, expendable. You'll still train, still eat that thick barley mush, still sleep shoulder to shoulder with the others, but they won't sit near you. Because shame in a place like this is contagious. Even your armor fits differently now. The straps feel looser, the weight of the helmet heavier, like your body knows it doesn't belong in this skin anymore. And when you pass through the corridors, no one meets your eyes. You're not dead, but you're no longer one of them. You're the reminder that survival doesn't always mean triumph. You sit by yourself that night, cradling the bruised part of your ribs where the blow landed hardest. The wound still weeps a little, but the shame that is dried, set, crusted over like old blood, impossible to wash away. And in your sleep you dream not of victory, but of silence. Because silence would be kinder than hearing them cheer for someone else tomorrow. You squint upward, but the sun stings your eyes. Above you, white togas, crisp clean, as if the dust of this world has never touched them. They sit under shade awnings, pulled taut like sails above their heads. Servants wave fans, wine cups clink. They look down on you, and you're standing in a pit, literally lower, figuratively discarded. The sand under your feet burns. It's midday. Your soles blister even through the thin leather. You can smell your own sweat. It stings your nostrils. The metal of your helmet sears your brow. And up there, they laugh. They don't laugh at you. Not yet. They're still deciding whether you're entertaining enough to deserve it. You're not a person to them. You're a roll of dice, a bet made with coins and sips of wine. 10 denarii on the tall one, 50 if he makes it bleed, double if he dies well. You hear it. Not the words, but the tones, the sharp excitement of gambling men. The man who owns you might be up there, feet propped, sipping something cold, already counting your value before the match begins. They call this sport. They call you asset. But when you fall, when blood darkens the sand around your knees, they call it a good show. You wonder for a moment if any of them would survive a minute down here, if they could even hold a sword, let alone swing it. But that thought disappears quickly. It's useless, because up there they live, and down here you don't. Even if you win, You hear a child cheer. He's maybe 6, clapping for you to die. His father ruffles his hair, beaming with pride. You don't blame the boy. He's never known anything else. And maybe neither did you before all this. But now you know too much. You know what it feels like to be the bottom rung, to have people toast your death with olives and honey cakes, to have your pain become their pastime. You look up one more time, and for a second your eyes meet someone's in the crowd. They blink, turn away, uncomfortable. Because for a moment you looked like a person. But not for long. They taught you how to swing, how to block, how to bleed without screaming, how to fall, sort of. But no one ever taught you how to die. Not really. No one explained what your legs would do when the final blow came, that they might fold inward like a puppet dropped mid-performance. No one warned you your arms might twitch, make you look like you're still fighting, even after your mind has gone quiet. And if you mess that up, if your collapse is too messy, too real, too human, they'll finish you off, not out of mercy, but for spectacle, because a clumsy death is an insult to the performance. You've seen it. A man takes a blow to the ribs, drops to his knees, and forgets his training. He gasps, clutches the wound, hunches over like a wounded animal. That's not the image they want. It's not dramatic, not glorious. So the victor hesitates, looks up to the editor, the crowd, waits for the nod. And then the blade goes in again, not because the man needed killing, but because his death wasn't tidy enough. You once watched a boy die with his hands over his face. He was barely 18. The crowd booed, not because he died, but because he died wrong, cowardly, untrained, unbecoming of the narrative they'd paid for. You still see his fingers curled, like he was shielding himself from more than just the sword. And you wonder who told these people that death was supposed to be beautiful, because in here, beauty costs everything. They don't want you to cry out. They want silence, a fall with flair. A collapse that says, I accept this even when you don't. But your body doesn't care about choreography. It shakes, it bleeds wrong. It flinches when it shouldn't. And if it does, then you die twice, once on the sand and again in their memory as the fool who ruined the ending. They say there was one man who lasted 10 years, a ghost in the sand, untouchable, undefeated. They whisper his name in the corners of the ludus, though no one knows if he ever really existed, or if he was just a story told to give hope a place to sit. The truth most don't last more than 1. 2 if they're lucky, or unlucky, depending on how you see it. Because surviving isn't always a triumph. Sometimes it's just a delay. You see, the body breaks long before the name makes it to legend. Joints don't forget repeated trauma. Scars build atop scars until the skin itself forgets where it began. And luck, that fickle, silent partner, has more say in survival than skill ever will. You remember one man, quick as lightning, never missed a block. Sharp eyes, strong legs. They called him the Cat. He bled out in his 3rd match. A shallow stab to the thigh. Wrong place, wrong moment. No fault of his, just bad luck. That's all it takes. Another man, slow, heavy, with a broken nose that never healed straight, made it 5 years. Not because he was strong, but because he knew how to fall, how to lose without dying. Sometimes knowing when to kneel is more powerful than knowing how to kill. But that's not the part they sing about. They don't want stories of ducking, of hiding behind shields, of slipping blows, and surrendering at the right time. They want blood, victory, final stabs and roaring crowds, so the ones who last, the cautious, the clever, the lucky, fade into rumor. And the 10-year champion, maybe he existed. Or maybe he's just what the new recruits need to believe in when the nights are cold and the bruises don't stop blooming. You look around at the faces in the dim firelight. Some hopeful, some hollow. And you know if anyone ever does make it to 10 years, he won't be whole, he won't be happy, he'll just be tired. They came in groups, tiny sandals scraping the marble, sticky fingers holding figs, eyes wide with wonder, voices shrill with excitement, children, some as young as 4, carried in by nurses led by tutors, wrapped in fine tunics with curious little eyes peeking out beneath curls. You heard them before you saw them, the high-pitched squeals, the excited chatter. They were told they were going to a show, a real Roman entertainment. And you were the puppet. When you slipped in the sand, they giggled. When your leg buckled, they clapped. When your opponent's blade caught your side, and you winced, not from the pain, but from the sheer absurdity of it, you could hear a cheer. Small, innocent, almost sweet. And somehow, it cut deeper than the wound. Afterwards, they sold tiny clay figures of you outside the arena. You mid-fall, or you slumped on your knees, sword at your side. Some children drew pictures with charcoal, of your face, of blood, of your arms stretched toward the sky as if asking for something, mercy maybe. But they didn't see that. They saw drama, they saw fun, and no one corrected them. In fact, their parents encouraged it. "Watch closely," one nobleman whispered to his son as you coughed up red into the sand. "It teaches courage." Courage or cruelty? You remember one boy? Bright eyes, white teeth. He blew you a kiss just before the final blow landed. You almost laughed, but your jaw was locked with pain. In that moment, you weren't a man. You weren't even a monster. You were a moment, a memory, filed between puppies and parades. By the next morning, they'd forgotten your name if they ever knew it. But they remembered the red, the way it sprayed across the golden sand, and how exciting it was. Your death, a highlight in a child's perfect afternoon. She wore pearls. A dozen of them woven into hair so fine you wondered if it had ever touched ash or dust. Her fingers were pale soft, no scars, no calluses, and they brushed your chest like you were some sculpture newly unearthed. She said she adored you, said your scars were beautiful, said your silence made you mysterious, but mostly she said nothing at all. Just stared, touched, breathed a little too close. You weren't supposed to be in her villa. Slaves were punished for less. But she paid the lanista. She always did. You weren't her first, you wouldn't be her last. To her, you weren't a man. You were a myth in the making, a doomed romance, a breathing tragedy. You were exciting because you were temporary. Some women craved the edge of death like others crave wine. It made everything more intense, more vivid. She once whispered, "Promise me you'll win your next match." You didn't answer, not because you didn't want to, but because you knew better. The last one who promised her died before noon. She wept briefly, then requested someone taller for the week after. This wasn't love. It was something else, obsession maybe, infatuation, an erotic fascination with decay. They wore perfume that cost more than your life, and clutched you like a souvenir from the underworld. When they kissed you, you tasted pomegranate, and pity, sometimes both. You remember how she once cried on your shoulder, not for you, but because her husband refused to buy her a new peacock. And you, half-dressed in chains, stood still like a pet who'd forgotten its leash. These women didn't mourn you when you died. They attended the next show, looked for the next story, the next scarred chest, the next fresh tragedy to inhale. And maybe, just maybe, that was the cruelest thing of all. Not the sand, not the sword, but the fact that even the illusion of affection was rented by the hour. You used to count the days. At first, you scratched little marks into the wooden frame of your cot, one for each morning, one for each bowl of barley mush. You'd whisper numbers to yourself, as if they meant something, as if they were moving you closer to something real. Freedom maybe, release, or even just the right to leave the Ludus gates without someone gripping a spear behind you. But then, something changed. You lost count. Not on purpose. Just one morning you forgot. Then another. Then another. The marks on the cot faded. The wood got replaced. The new frame stayed clean. You stopped whispering numbers. Stopped believing there'd be a last fight where the crowd roared and someone threw you a wooden sword, the symbol of manumission. That dream felt ridiculous now. Like a game children invent when the world outside is too large, too cruel. You remembered what hope used to feel like warm bread, or the smell of olive trees in your mother's yard. But now your heart had folded in on itself, like a letter never sent, like a fist that's tired of clenching. No one talks about freedom anymore. Not the new recruits, they're too scared to ask. Not the veterans, they've seen too many corpses. You saw a man win 5 matches, still here. Saw another get promised release, then accidentally stabbed in a practice fight a week before his ceremony. You don't dream of fields or vineyards or even your own bed. Now your dreams are just blank walls, heavy footsteps, the feeling of sweat under iron straps. Sometimes not even that. Just darkness. Deep, quiet darkness where nothing hurts because nothing breathes. You sleep to survive, not to rest, not to imagine. Your dreams died long before your body ever will. And somehow, that's what keeps you alive. It finally happened. The moment they told you would never come, the wooden sword, root is pressed into your palm. Not as a weapon, but as a symbol. You were free. No more chains, no more sand-stained blood, no more mornings with your name on a death schedule. People clapped, even cheered. But when the applause faded, you were still standing there, still in the arena, still that man. You step outside the gates, and the world doesn't know where to put you. You try to rent a room. The landlord stares too long at your scars, at the tattoo on your neck, at the silence you carry like a second skin. You ask for work. They shake their heads. You were a gladiator, they ask, like you'd say you used to eat corpses or burn cities. You smile politely. You say you're good with tools. You once were a carpenter, a mason, a farmer. But no one trusts hands that once killed for applause. Women look at you like a myth, like a ghost that forgot how to die. They may flirt, some even fantasize, but no one takes you home to meet their mother. You're not a man anymore. You're a story, a danger, a souvenir from the violence Rome sells to itself. You walk the streets. Hear children pretend to be you in play fights. They laugh when they fall. They don't know what it means to land and not get up. You try to sleep in a proper bed. It's too soft, too quiet. You miss the grunts of others trying to forget tomorrow. You were freed, yes, but no one prepared you for a world that forgot how to see you as anything but a walking weapon. And in time, you forget too. Forget how to speak without command, how to eat without ration, how to exist without waiting for a whistle, or a sword, or an ending. You were freed, but you don't know what to do with it. So you wander. Eat when you can. Sleep where you're not chased away. You sit by fountains and watch the water move free without bruises, without fear. And sometimes, when a young boy stares at you too long, you look away, because in his eyes, you see what you once were. And you know he won't survive it. They told you the games were sacred, that you fought with honor, that the crowd loved you, that your name would live on. But when you die, no trumpets, no final rites, no carved stone to mark where you fell. Just a silence that doesn't last long, because the next fight is already being announced. Your body, still warm, still bleeding, gets dragged away like a sack of spoiled grain. The sand drinks your blood because it has no choice. It's done it so many times before. It knows the taste. Sometimes they toss you in the pit behind the arena, a shallow trench where the bones of the forgotten crowd each other for space. If you're lucky, they throw a thin layer of dirt over your face. Sometimes not even that. Some dogs know the scent. They come back at night, dig, sniff, tear. They say Rome is a city of grandeur, of marble and gods and eternal glory. But behind its greatest arena is a hole where men rot like discarded props. You weren't buried. You were erased. No marker, no name, no son to cry for you, no mother to visit once a year. Just the sand, and maybe a torn cloth someone forgot to take off. Your comrades, if they survive, might glance toward that corner the next morning. But they don't linger, because staring too long means remembering you had a name, and names make the dying harder. They whisper that only champions get proper burials, if they make it long enough, if they die in just the right way, if someone wealthy enough thinks they're worth the gesture. But you weren't that. You were the warm-up fight, the one people used to finish their breakfast, the one no one cheered for. Not because you weren't brave, but because they'd already forgotten your face before the blood dried. There's no heaven carved in marble for men like you. Only a stray bone here, a rusted bracer there. A story no one will tell, except maybe me, because now tonight your shadow is flickering in someone's imagination, just for a moment. And maybe that's better than any stone. You won. They cheered, the nobles nodded. Your opponent's body was dragged off the sand, but you were still standing, bleeding, but breathing. It should feel like triumph, but it doesn't, because the first thing you hear after the roar of the crowd fades isn't praise. It's your name shouted by a guard summoning you back to the cells. No feast, no rest, just the bitter taste of iron in your mouth and the dull throb of a cut you didn't notice until now. The wound is small, they say, but it festers. By morning it smells wrong. By the third day your arm won't move right. By the fifth you're not hungry. By the seventh, you can't breathe without shaking. And the medicus shrugs. Another one, he says. Another victor rotting from the inside. They don't let you lie down. Not for long. Because someone needs your cot. Because someone needs your armor. Because you're no use to them if you're just breathing, but not fighting. So they move you. From cell to storeroom. From storeroom to back lot. And when you die, no one says your name. The lanista notes it in his ledger. Crosses you out. A new recruit will take your place by week's end. He won't know your face. Only your measurements. So he can wear your helmet. Out in the arena, they might still remember you. For a few days, that fight. The one where you dodged just right. Where your sword found the sweet spot between armor plates. But the memory fades like blood in the sand. You were glorious. For a moment. But you were always dying. From the first blow. From the first breath you took inside those gates. Victory in the arena isn't a reward. It's a delay. A stay of execution. You didn't win. You borrowed time. On loan from the same hand that now lowers you into the dirt. No statues, no song. Just one less name to call it roll. So sleep now. You don't need to fight anymore. The crowd has forgotten. The sword has moved on. But I haven't. I remember. Tonight you win again in memory. Centuries later, someone finds a vase. It's old, cracked, painted in terracotta and black. And on its curve, a figure with a short sword, a crested helmet, 1 foot triumphantly atop a fallen foe. They say it's you. Your name scratched in faded Latin, misspelled, twice. The body is perfect, sculpted like a god. Shoulders broad, biceps absurd. But you weren't built like that. Not then. Your real shoulder sagged from a dislocated joint. Your knee cracked when it rained. And you always turned your face when swinging because your left eye never fully healed. But the painter didn't know, or didn't care. He needed drama, not truth. So he gave you clean lines, a proud stance, a face untouched by fear. He left out the limp, the scar that ran from collarbone to hip, the chipped tooth you never remembered chipping. The people who see the vestiges in the museum today, they marvel. How brave, they whisper. How noble. They don't see you. Not really. They see a story, a symbol, a gladiator, not a man. No one paints the moment you vomited from nerves, or the night you cried into the straw pillow, biting your wrist so no one would hear. No one frescoes the time you begged to skip training because your ribs wouldn't stop screaming. Instead, they give you a laurel crown. They surround you with adoring crowds. They place you on a plinth of false memory. Your pain too inconvenient, your exhaustion unheroic. In their version, you died with grace, not curled in a corner, shivering, hoping the next hit would be the last. That's the trick of time. It sands off the edges, paints over the mess, turns blood into decoration. But if they could have seen you as you were, they wouldn't have drawn so cleanly. There would have been sweat stains and a stare that said, I am here, but I am not okay. Tonight we remember the truth. Not the vase, not the mural, but the man beneath the paint. And even if your name is wrong, even if your arms are too muscular in the memory, I see you. And I won't forget. One day they brought a man into the camp. He wasn't bleeding. He wasn't limping. He wasn't even scared. He wore armor polished untouched. He held a wooden sword, light and decorative. He grinned at the guards, waved to the lanista. He was an actor. A performer from Rome, sent to study real gladiators so he could play one in the next grand performance for the emperor's birthday. He looked at you and smiled. Not in cruelty, in curiosity. Like you were a painting he wanted to copy. He asked you how to walk, how to breathe between hits, what it felt like to win. You didn't answer. Not because you were rude, but because the question felt like salt in a wound. Out there in the cities, men dressed like you for fun. They donned fake armor, wore painted scars, and shouted pretend war cries on safe wooden stages. Crowds clapped, women swooned, children pointed, and said that's what bravery looks like. They had no idea. They never felt the weight of a real gladius. Never had to scrub someone else's blood from their skin. Never saw a friend twitch and seize because a blow to the head wouldn't let him stop. The word gladiator became fashion, a brand, a joke, printed on mosaics, worn on rings, even written in love poems by men who'd never set foot in sand. Your suffering, their costume. Your silence, their monologue. Your death, their act 3. And when the actor left the camp, he waved again. He said he admired you. He said, "If I could live like you for just one day." You almost laughed. Because you did, and that one day never ended. Tonight, as the candle burns low, you wonder if someone in the city is dancing beneath the stars, wearing your name. Maybe they're drunk. Maybe they're beloved. Maybe they'll be remembered, but not for who you are, for who they pretend you were. You didn't kill him. That day, the arena smelled like iron and oranges. The crowd was bored, the sun was cruel, and your opponent was on the ground gasping. You stood above him, sword poised, waiting for the signal. Thumbs, always the thumbs. But that day, you hesitated. He was young, eyes wide like yours had once been. A scar under his collarbone pulsed with fear, and the thumb turned sideways, not up, not down. It meant your choice. So you made one. You spared him. You thought maybe it would mean something, that he'd remember, that mercy given once might echo. And for a while you forgot him, until the day came. It was 3 winters later. You had more scars now, less hope. Your shoulder ached from a wound that never quite healed right. They said the next match would be routine, a crowd pleaser. You weren't even worried, until he stepped into the ring. It took you a moment to recognize him. He was bigger now, colder, the fear in his eyes replaced by calculation. He didn't flinch when he saw you, didn't bow, didn't even blink. The whistle blew, and the first strike came fast, aimed for your bad arm. You realized too late this wasn't just a match. It was a memory, a debt, a kill returned. They said he had risen quickly, that he'd trained harder after you spared him, that he spoke often of the man who humiliated me. And here he was, making sure the crowd saw him take you apart, one cut at a time. You tried to speak, to remind him, but the arena isn't for words. When he finally drove the blade through, he leaned close and whispered, "You should have finished it." They cheered, not because you died, but because he looked good doing it. In the end, mercy meant nothing, not here. Not when everyone's counting kills. Not when the only story that matters is who walked out standing. You lie down on the wooden plank. There's no pillow, no blanket, just a scratchy cloth across your legs, and the sword pressed against your chest. It's not for safety. You're not guarding against thieves or traitors tonight. Everyone knows what tomorrow is, and no one here wants your sword. It's not sharp anyway, not anymore. The edge dulled from training. The handle, slick with years of blood and calluses. Still, you hold it close. Because it's yours. Not by ownership, not really. You didn't forge it. You didn't buy it. You weren't even the first to hold it. But right now, in this last stretch of silence, it's the only thing that won't leave you. Your family's gone. Your name forgotten. Even your body bruised and branded feels more like it belongs to the arena than to you. But this sword, it lies still when you lie still. It warms under your breath. It doesn't speak, but it listens. And maybe, just maybe if you die holding it, you won't die empty. You hear someone snore. Someone else prays. A third one sobs into the darkness, as quietly as he can. You stay quiet. Not because you're brave. Because you're tired. The sword presses into your ribs. You shift a little, not too much. Don't want to wake it. Because tonight, it's not just a weapon. It's your anchor, your last decision, your final illusion of control. You don't know who you'll face tomorrow. You don't know how long it will last. But you do know one thing. When the gate opens, they'll take everything from you. Your silence, your blood, your breath. So tonight, you sleep with the one thing that can't be stolen. And even if it kills you tomorrow, at least, just for this one last night, it's yours. You're still breathing. You don't know how. There's blood in your mouth, and something sharp tugging at your side. Your opponent is on the ground not moving, but your knees are shaking too hard to feel like a victory. The crowd rises. Thousands of voices suddenly become one. You can't tell what they're shouting. Too many words, too many mouths. But the gestures, those are clear. Some thrust their fists in the air. Some point their thumbs sideways, or downward, or up, but not the way you'd think, because the myths got it wrong. A thumbs up in the arena didn't mean mercy. It meant steal. It meant kill. A closed fist that could mean mercy. Or maybe not. It changes with the mood. And moods in a drunken crowd are as stable as sand in the wind. Maybe your opponent looked too weak. Maybe the crowd didn't like his accent. Maybe someone spilled their wine at the exact moment he cried out. So they shout, "Death." And the editor, the man in charge, richer than all of you, combined glances at the crowd. He doesn't know your story, doesn't care that this was your first fight, doesn't remember your name. He raises a finger, not to point, to judge. If he tilts it the wrong way, your sword must finish what it started. Or worse, if he points it at you, and they think you were too soft, too slow, too hesitant to entertain, then the sword turns back toward your own chest. One cheer, one cough, one spoiled mood can drown you in the sand. You trained for months. You broke bones for this. You've eaten barley mash and fought in silence for a chance to survive. And now it comes down to how amusing you were. How loudly they laughed. How excited they felt. Whether they liked the way you swung your blade. You don't fight for honor. You fight for indulgence. Their indulgence. And every scream from the stands tastes like vinegar in your lungs. Because in the Colosseum, the gods don't choose who lives. The drunks do. You didn't mean to fall, but your leg gave out. Or maybe it was the angle, the weight of the sand pulling you sideways, like a traitor. You're not sure, but you're down now. And that's all that matters. You try to lift your head, but the world tips sideways. Your breath is loud, not like breathing more, like choking on warm water. There's something wet in your mouth. You already know it's not sweat. You try to say something, anything. Maybe please, maybe wait, maybe the name of someone you loved once before all this. But your jaw doesn't move. Your lips part, but your tongue is heavy. And the taste is thick, metallic, warm. Your own blood drowning your own voice. You remember watching someone else go like this. A boy no older than 20 collapsed just like this, right where your head rests now. He opened his mouth, tried to speak. Nothing came out. Only a bubble. Then silence. You wanted to look away back then. Now you understand why no one did. Because when a man tries to speak in his last breath, it's not begging. It's not cowardice. It's just the final instinct of a creature that knows it's slipping into something no one ever comes back from. You want to speak. You want to say, "I'm still here. I'm not done. This isn't fair." Or even just "Mama." But all that comes out is a gargle, a twitch, and a single tear cutting across the dust on your cheek. The sword is raised above you now. Not yours, his. Your eyes meet just for a second. Do you look pitiful? Do you look brave? Does it even matter? The audience can't hear you. They don't want to. Your voice, if it ever comes, will be buried under the roar of the crowd. And even if you had managed a word, no one was listening. It wasn't the blade that killed you. Not really. It wasn't the cracked rib, or the blood that soaked your tunic, or the way your lungs filled slower and slower until breathing felt like treading mud. It was what came after, or rather what didn't. There's no silence like the silence after your name is never said again. Your body gets dragged. Like all the others, no farewell, no ceremony, not even a nod from the men who cleaned the blood off the sand, the cot you slept in stripped. Your blanket tossed to the next body that still had a pulse. The bowl you drank from scrubbed, refilled, handed to someone new. By noon, another man is grunting where you once trained. Another pair of sandals thumps where yours used to echo. You were fierce once. You remember that. People used to chant a name, yours or at least what they thought was yours. A nickname. Something carved into their laughter, right before the next cheer. But it fades fast, even those shouts. By tomorrow, no one will remember the shape of your face, or the scar on your collarbone, or the way you used to tie your belt twice, not once, because it made you feel more secure. Your death doesn't echo. It doesn't stain history. It doesn't ripple. It disappears, like ash in wind. There is a word the Lanista used once replaceable. He said it while eating, licking chicken grease from his fingers, talking about you. You didn't flinch then. You thought you'd prove him wrong. But now your name is already being crossed off a roster. Your boots already claimed by someone else. The little wooden token with your number burned. There's no grave, no stone. No one will come here years later kneel and say he was brave. There's no he anymore. No you. You weren't erased. That would require someone caring enough to notice you were ever there. You simply faded. And in the end, that's what killed you. Not the sword, not the pain, not the loss, but the quiet erasure of your existence. You're still here, still breathing, still warm, still safe, I hope, beneath a blanket of ceiling. A life that lets you rest without fear. You've heard my story, or fragments of it anyway. Maybe you've drifted in and out. Maybe my voice has blended into the hum of your fan, the rustle of your sheets, the murmur of your thoughts. And tomorrow, you'll wake, you'll stretch. Maybe brush your teeth, sip coffee, check your phone. You'll go on, as you should. But me, I'll still be here, in that same patch of sand, long since dried of blood, long since forgotten. I was once real. I had a name, a mother, a voice that trembled when I first held a sword. But all that's gone now, scrubbed away, as if I never drew breath. You heard me speak, not because I'm still alive, but because someone dug deep enough into the past to uncover the hollow whisper of what remains. This voice, the one you're hearing it, isn't truly mine. It's dust, given shape, a flicker of memory disguised as sound. And even this, even now, will fade. You'll close your eyes. You'll forget the name I didn't give you. Forget the image you formed of my scarred face, my calloused hands, my quiet death. You'll move on, and that's okay. But before you go, just this. If someday you pass a stone broken by time or see a rusted helm behind museum glass or read a name you don't recognize carved into marble, spare a breath for me, just one. Not for the warrior they painted me to be, not for the myth they made me into, but for the man who once had dreams and fears and a voice just like you. That moment might be the only time I am alive again. And even if it never comes, thank you for listening this far. Because tonight, for the first time in centuries, someone remembered. Even if just for a little while. You've probably seen him. The rugged jawline, the weathered armor, the lone man in the arena standing tall against tyranny. The music swells, the crowd roars, and somehow, through grit and honor, he wins. Hollywood gave you that. A gladiator with a heart of gold and abs of steel. A man who fights for justice, freedom, maybe even love. But that man didn't exist. Not in Rome. Not under the sun that beat down on real blood and real screams. The truth? A gladiator was not a hero. He was an investment, a product, a slave trained, fed, paraded, and discarded when broken. Russell Crowe's Maximus had choice. He rode horses, he fell in love. He defied emperors, the real gladiators. They couldn't even speak unless spoken to. They couldn't fall asleep without permission. They couldn't die with dignity unless it fit the choreography of the crowd. And they certainly didn't fall in love with the empress. The romantic image. It was sculpted centuries later. By artists. By poets. By people who had never smelled dried blood in the sand. Never flinched at the snap of a collarbone mid-fight. They called the arena a place of valor. But it was a theater. A trap, a circus disguised as a court of glory. Gladiators didn't fight for honor. They fought because they had to. Because behind the curtain was a man with a whip, and behind the crowd were coins being passed hand to hand. And if you ever wonder what freedom looked like for a gladiator, it wasn't riding off into the sunset. It was maybe being allowed to live another day. So the next time you see him on screen, bare-chested and noble, fighting for love or vengeance, remember, he's not the same man who bled in that sand. Because that man wasn't beautiful, wasn't victorious, wasn't free. He was forgotten. And Hollywood simply gave him a prettier ending. You've seen it in every movie. The fallen gladiator, on his knees, chest heaving, eyes locked on the emperor, or maybe the crowd. Then a hand rises. A thumb turns. Down means death. Up means mercy. Except that's not how it worked. The truth is, no one really agrees what the thumb meant. Not even the Romans. There was no universal signal. No secret code shared across Colosseums. Thumbs up might have meant kill him. Thumbs down might have meant put the sword away. Some say a closed fist meant mercy. Some say an open palm. And others say it was never about the hand at all. It was about the noise, the screaming, the chanting, the thunder of sandals stomping stone. It was about the crowd's appetite and the host's willingness to feed it. Sometimes before the match even began, the mood of the audience had been prepared. Drink flowed. Performers warmed up the arena. Merchants whispered who to cheer for. The crowd didn't decide. They were told who to love and who to loathe. And once that energy surged, once it became a wave of kill, it was nearly impossible to stop. There were no rules, only theater, only the illusion that mercy could be voted on. The fallen man never knew which signal would matter. All he saw was chaos. All he heard was the roar. Imagine dying not because of your failure, but because the man beside a senator shouted louder than the woman next to him. Imagine your life weighed against a mood. You didn't win mercy. You didn't earn it. You hoped for it from strangers who'd never remember your name, but would remember how fun it was when you begged. So no, it wasn't the thumb. It was the tide. And if it turned against you, there was no hand in the world that could save you. You might think they were adored. You might imagine them bathed in cheers, showered with love, the Roman version of rock stars. Some were, sort of. Their names were chanted in the Colosseum, their faces painted on pottery. Children collected little figurines of their favorites, carved in wood, molded in clay. They were written into poems, even gossiped about at dinner tables, but only while they were in the arena, out there in the sunlight, with blood still drying on their skin. They were dangerous, not romantic, not respected, just tolerated, like fireworks, dazzling, loud, thrilling, but never invited indoors. Outside the sand, a gladiator was still a slave, or worse, a man who'd volunteered to throw his life away. He could not marry a Roman citizen, he could not vote, he could not own land, and if a woman of status dared fall in love with him, it was called scandal, not storybook. Even the most famous, the ones with songs sung about them, were denied basic dignity. They were barred from temples, banned from public office, forbidden from mingling with the clean layers of society. Why? Because they killed, because they bled, because they were too close to death, and death was dirty. It didn't matter how many matches you survived, how many times the crowd rose to their feet when you struck the final blow. You were a beast that knew how to bow. Nothing more. Some gladiators were beloved, but never loved. Not truly, not safely, not like a senator, or a soldier, or even a baker. So yes, they were celebrities, but only in the way a flame is admired from a distance for a moment, and only as long as it burns, then forgotten. You've probably heard it before, that some people chose this life, that they volunteered, signed contracts, stepped into the sand with open arms. And yes, some did. But what kind of choice is it? When there's no food in your home, when your debts outlive your hope, when the only thing you have left to sell is your body. In Rome, they were called octorati volunteers. But that word is misleading. These weren't thrill-seekers chasing glory. They were desperate men, bakers whose ovens had gone cold, farmers whose fields were flooded, debtors fleeing prison or shame. They signed away their names, their rights, their futures, because they couldn't survive otherwise. And Rome welcomed them, not with kindness, but with contracts. Binding, brutal, permanent. They were branded, literally, hot iron against skin, so no one forgot what they were. And once they were in, there was no getting out, no changing your mind, no backing away. Imagine a world where someone in a suit smiles and says, "You agreed to this," while holding a whip. That's what volunteering looked like. And the others, the majority. They didn't sign anything. They were war captives dragged from burning cities. They were slaves sold like livestock. They were criminals, real or accused, some guilty, some just unlucky. And they were thrown into the sand without a name, without a choice, without even the illusion of freedom. So next time someone tells you that gladiators were willing, warriors ask them, would you fight a lion for a loaf of bread? Would you sell your future just to see tomorrow? Would you volunteer if there was no other door? You might wonder, how did anyone cheer for this? How did children clap as men bled out in the sands? How did grandmothers place bets while bodies were dragged away? It wasn't madness, it was culture. In ancient Rome, the arena wasn't a crime scene. It was a festival, a holiday, a carefully staged performance where death played the lead role. People dressed up for the games, they packed snacks, wrote poems, traded gossip between executions. This wasn't seen as cruelty, it was entertainment, expected, normalized. Because the Colosseum wasn't just about sport, it was about power. Every time the emperor staged a game, he wasn't just feeding the masses. He was reminding them who fed them, who controlled life, and who decided death. They called it Panem et circenses, bread and circuses. Keep the people fed, keep them amused, and they won't ask questions. You see, violence became the glue that held the empire together, a shared language, a communal rhythm. The roar of the crowd replaced the voice of dissent, and blood on the sand was easier to clean than truth in the streets. The Colosseum wasn't just stone and sand. It was a message: you matter only as long as you cheer. And centuries later, when we watch suffering through screens, when pain is packaged as content, when reality shows mimic cruelty for laughs, maybe we haven't strayed so far. The Colosseum may be a ruin, its marble chipped, its tunnels collapsed, its roar long silenced, but its spirit still very much alive. Because you don't need a lion pit to enjoy the fall. You just need a screen, a scroll, a spark of curiosity when you see the words, "Watch until the end." Thousands of years ago, people cheered as bodies broke. Today they comment, "Serves him right. She had it coming. I'd pay to see that again." Different era, same instinct. We watch reality shows where people are humiliated. We binge documentaries on murders. We laugh at street fights caught on shaky phones. We rate them, react to them, rewatch them. It's not the Colosseum anymore, but the blood's still warm. Not long ago, a study showed that clips featuring pain or conflict spread faster than those of joy. Because anger grabs attention, cruelty goes viral. And even if we don't cheer with our mouths, our clicks speak volumes. Rome gave us the blueprint. Modern media just added Wi-Fi. The stone is gone, but the impulse to gather gawk and gasp as someone else falls is etched deep into our cultural muscle. We don't sit on stone benches anymore, but our eyes still follow blood, like it's a storyline. And suffering, when edited just right, still makes for good content. Let's pause. Not the story, but the reason you're still here. Because this isn't just about Rome. It's not just swords and sand and blood in the dust. It's about something deeper, quieter. You're listening to the pain of a man who was stripped of his name, and somehow, it's comforting. Strange, isn't it? Maybe it's not about gladiators at all. Maybe it's about you. Maybe you felt it too, the weight of a world asking you to perform to smile, to survive in a system that doesn't care how tired you are. Maybe your arena doesn't have lions, but it has deadlines and doubts. And days that bleed into nights where you wonder if anyone even knows your real name anymore. That's why this story stays with you. Because even if your hands aren't calloused from sword grips, your mind might be scarred from expectations. Even if you're not fighting for your life, maybe you're fighting for a version of yourself you're scared of losing. And here in the soft dark, you let someone else's pain sing you to sleep. Not because you enjoy suffering, but because it reminds you you're not alone in it. If you've made it this far, maybe you too have felt like a gladiator in a world that just keeps clapping. There is no music, no violin swell, no curtain call, no grieving widow with a tear-streaked veil. Only sand and silence, and the faint mark of a body dragged across the dirt. By now, you've walked the entire perimeter. You've felt the sting of raw shoulders under leather, the press of broken ribs against a cold floor, the laughter of children as someone bled, the look in your bunkmate's eyes, the one who might kill you tomorrow. You've tasted metal. You've swallowed names. You've seen freedom held out like a torch, then snatched away before it warmed your hand. And now you wonder what's left: no statues, no epic poems, no sacred tomb with olive wreaths and carved stone, only echoes, only numbers etched into slave tags, buried with the bones. And us sitting centuries away, trying to imagine the noise of it all through a screen in the dark with dry eyes. They died loud, but they are remembered quietly, if remembered at all. You've made it. 56 glimpses, 56 moments through their eyes, their skin, their breath. You've woken in a stone cell. You've swallowed the taste of iron. You've trained until your bones ached, then trained again. You've listened to a crowd decide if you lived or died, not with laws, but with a single finger. You've stood across from someone you once called friend. You've fallen. You've bled. You've begged, sometimes aloud, sometimes in silence, and you're still here. Not in chains, not beneath the Colosseum, not waiting for the sun to rise and the gate to open again. You're in a bed, your chest rising and falling, your hands not shaking from a blade, but maybe from something else. A quiet awe, perhaps, or the strange closeness you feel to someone whose name was never written down. If you've made it this far, you've done something they never could. You lived their story and survived. Now that you've left the sand behind, take a moment and look around. You're not in a cage. There's no iron gate, no horn to signal the fight. But maybe, just maybe, you felt something strangely familiar. A place where people clap louder when someone stumbles, where you're expected to smile while bleeding, perform while exhausted, and win, not just to survive, but to be seen. The office, the feed, the stage behind the glass of your screen. Modern arenas with marble swapped for LED, with spectators scrolling, judging, liking, booing. Have you ever felt like you were on, even when you wanted to fall apart? Have you been rewarded, not for being kind, but for being sharper, louder, faster? And when you collapsed, did anyone notice? Did anyone care the gladiators died in sand? But we are asked to endure in silence. Maybe that's the difference. They had swords, we have smiles. But the pressure to perform, it's just as sharp. Let's leave the arena for a moment. Let's talk about you. Not the version people see, not the polished smile, not the "I'm fine" you've repeated so many times it became muscle memory. I mean the you who held back tears in a bathroom stall, who bit your tongue because crying didn't fit the schedule, who kept walking even when everything inside you begged to stop. Maybe you've never held a sword, but you've held your breath through grief, held your ground when it felt like the earth would split beneath you, and no one saw. Not the long nights, not the panic tucked behind productivity, not the cracked voice you cleared before the call. Because in this world, pain that isn't visible doesn't count, and strength isn't admired unless it looks effortless. So you became the quiet kind of strong, the kind that never makes headlines, the kind that gets up again and again and again, until even you forgot what it feels like to rest. You may not wear armor, but you've survived battles no one will ever understand. And somehow, you're still here. It's over now. The arena, the shouting, the scent of blood warming under the sun. It's all gone. No sand underfoot, no armor digging into your shoulders, no eyes watching your every move. You're not performing anymore. There's no one left to impress, no one left to fear. Just you, and the breath you didn't realize you were holding. In, out, like waves brushing the shore in the dark. The crowd has vanished, their cheers swallowed by silence. The lanterns have burned out. Even the stars have turned away for the night. It's quiet now. And in that quiet, something loosens. Your fingers, your jaw, your chest. Nothing is chasing you. Nothing is waiting. There is no next match, no next blow. Only a ceiling you cannot see, a hum from the fan that spins slow and steady, and the gentle weight of your body sinking just enough into the mattress below. You're not a gladiator, not a performer, not tonight. You're just a person, still, breathing, safe. You've done enough. Whatever today asked of you, you gave it. You stood where you needed to stand. You said what needed saying. You held yourself together when no one noticed how much effort that took. But now, no one is watching. There's no scoreboard, no judgment, no need to be anything but tired. Let your shoulders drop. Let your stomach soften. Let your jaw unclench. You don't have to prove anything. Not here, not now. There is no performance tonight. No one waiting to see if you'll rise again. No sword to lift, no stage to stand on. The only thing left to do is rest. Close your eyes if you haven't already. Let them feel heavy. Let your breath fall into its own rhythm. Slow, safe. You don't have to be strong tonight. You don't have to win. You just have to sleep. And in this quiet place, that's enough. More than enough. It's over. You're not standing on blood-soaked sand. You're not clutching a dull blade. You're not waiting for a stranger's hand to seal your fate. That was then. That was someone else's story. And somehow you made it back. No sand under you now. Just the softness of your own mattress. No shouting crowds. Just the hum of quiet things. A fan, a clock, the hush of night. You're not being watched. There's no mark on your skin. No number tied to your name. No one owns your breath. You're not a gladiator. Not anymore. You're a person, a name, a body resting in peace. Your hands are clean. Your chest rises slow. Your limbs are yours. Your life is yours. And you made it. Through the dust, the noise, the fear, you arrived at this moment. So stay here. Sink in. No need to go anywhere else. You're not in Rome. You're here. Safe, clean, alive. Sleep now. You've survived Rome. Not as a hero, not as a name etched into marble, but as a soul who made it through. Through dust and bruises. Through hunger and fear. Through 56 tiny deaths, and still, you're here. Not for glory, not for gold, but for the quiet miracle of still breathing. No more crowds, no more wounds, no more running from the next match or the next command or the next goodbye. You've put down the sword. You've stopped listening for footsteps. There's no voice barking orders, no torchlight at your door. Just this bed, this silence, this moment that doesn't ask you to be strong. You're not bleeding. You're not pretending. You're just safe. Your body is heavy now, like it finally believes it can let go, like it remembers what softness is. Let your limbs drift. Let your eyes blur. Let your breath slower. There is no sand beneath you. Only cotton, no blood, only sleep. You're not in Rome. You're not in pain. You're not fighting anymore. You made it. So sleep, brave soul of the night. Sleep. You've survived Rome.